So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like you wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1575 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Learn how to plan, invest, and live smarter. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mic'd is Bruce Dowbiggin. Welcome back, Bruce.
Good to be back. I think this is my 5th time on the show.
But who's counting? You should get you're telling me you need a jacket or something. Is that what they did on SNL?
I was just about to say, if you do 5, don't you get a gold jacket or...
I remember when Tom Hanks got the jacket. This is going way back now because he. But yeah, that was a big deal. John Goodman, these, Steve Martin, of course. Yeah. These were the Five Timers Club members on Saturday Night Live.
You should have something like a hoodie or something. You know.
You know what? I need a clothing sponsor. Let me see what I can do. Maybe Great Lakes has a hoodie for the Five Timer Club. But it's good to see you, man.
It's good to be seen. Nice to be in Toronto and. It's absolutely splendid day today. It's like Labor Day weekend out there. It's so warm.
No, it's like 22 degrees today. Yeah. Like shorts weather, insane for November. So off the top, I want to timestamp the episode.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't know when people will listen, but they're welcome to listen, 5 minutes after we take our photo by the Toronto tree. But today, Bruce Dowbiggin, is November 5th, 2024. And tell us, you're a political junkie. Tell us why that's a significant day.
Election day in the United States. Absolutely. Presidential election. The most consequential.
Wow. Why didn't we book
time.
this for tomorrow? Not that we will know, who knows what we'll know tonight when we go to bed.
I completely forgot. Forgot.
Are you here? Are you in Toronto tomorrow?
I am.
Okay, get out of here, Bruce. We're doing this tomorrow. Okay.
I probably have the morning open tomorrow too. But yeah.
Because you picked, you know what? Depending what happens tonight, I might have to call you back to discuss. But, off the top, what are your feelings? What does your crystal ball say about what will happen in the US of A in this election?
I have feelings, but I don't have details. And I was supposedly a reporter when I was younger, so I don't want to make predictions based on
But you're not a reporter
feelings.
Here. You're here as Citizen Bruce.
There's going to be a lot of splaining to do on one side or the other because I've been following all of the polls and the reporting. And it's clear that sort of, the mainstream polling that supports the Democratic Party is behind them. There are people who are supporting the Republican Party and Donald Trump. The problem with this election is that neither side has left themselves any, place to back up. Like everybody's pushed their chips in. This you've probably played some poker late at night, and
sure,
it gets to that, and
you're all in, right?
There's that final FU thing where everybody puts it into the middle. And they don't have anywhere to go after this. And so it's going to be really interesting, scary. I don't know what it is. We could have a whole lot of superstar media people move to Canada. That's what they keep saying anyhow.
Well, and it's not as easy as they think it is, right? Like I've talked to people who have made the move and they're like, oh, this wasn't quite as easy as I thought it would be. It's quite a process to move to Canada.
We're different. I mean, what's her name? The comedian, the American comedian, who's from Missouri. Anyhow, she talks about Canada being America's attic. And
nice try.
Well, she says you stick your head up and say, "Ooh, look at everything up here." And there's some stuff over there, and this is kind of nice. She said, "But do you want to live in an attic?"
The fastest route, I think, is to marry a Canadian, and that's not that. It's also not that easy.
No.
They want video proof that when you make out, you enjoy it. Like there's a
well, not to be a cynic, but I think if you come across Roxham Road in Quebec these days, they'll take care of you, and you can certainly have the equivalent of being a citizen.
Oh my goodness gracious, Bruce. Okay,
Same thing
so a
with
lot of
Mexico.
ground I want to cover because I want to get back to this. But you are, as you mentioned off the top, I think it's your 5th visit.
Yes, sir.
You're a multi-time guest, Bruce Dowbiggin, and I just thought about that name, Bruce. Okay, then I started thinking, tomorrow night I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen live in concert for the very first time.
Really?
My first Bruce Springsteen concert is tomorrow night. Are you going to catch Bruce while you're in town?
Saw him Sunday.
You saw it? How was it?
The guy's 75 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy I was with who took me to the concert is 79, just 4 years difference. And Springsteen just doesn't stop for 3 hours.
Isn't that unbelievable?
You know, usually you go to a concert and the song ends and they meander around, they tune a guitar, they do this, they do this. He just does one right after they boom, 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 boom. Just absolutely spectacular showmanship. The music, everybody knows the music.
Yeah.
I wish I had the concession for artificial hips and knees in the crowd. It's a plus 50 crowd that's there.
Yeah. Okay.
But they're all into you're gonna. Well, I'm presuming you're a Springsteen fan.
Well, here's it. So I am of an age where my introduction to Bruce Springsteen is Born in the USA. Okay, so that was because I was listening to a lot of top 40 as like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And it's there was a lot of Born in the USA on top 40 radio when I was 10 years old. So that's my Bruce introduction. Glory Days, Born in the USA, Dancing in the Dark, the video with Alex P. Keaton's girlfriend in it. She'd go on to be in Friends. Courtney Cox, that was the Dancing in the Dark video. But all that, and that was pretty cool. But it wasn't until fairly recently that I embraced 70s Bruce. Yeah. Because I miss 70s Bruce, and I didn't really go back to it till recently. So I would say now I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan.
Born in the USA is about a third into his career. It's at a point where he starts to know who he is as a megastar. I'm old enough that I was working at U of T at the newspaper out at Arundel, which is now U of T Mississauga. I was the entertainment guy, and I got the Wild, the Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle. I had no idea who this guy was or whatever. And in some respects, I think it's still my favorite record because it was before he got John Landau. John Landau, and I'm not going to knock John Landau. He made him into a superstar. He said, "Here's your sound. Here's what you're going to do." And there are songs on The Wild, the Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle, which aren't perfect, but it sort of encapsulates the energy, the wordplay, and it's kind of Springsteen from himself as opposed to the other ones, which are a little more produced. But he's fantastic. He was a guy who I think I've seen him now 4 times in various places. I think Calgary once, Toronto 3 times, and he's kind of like a signpost in your life when you saw him. Right. And he took showmanship for rock and roll at a time when everybody was sloppy and the guys seemed buzzed all the time, or it was Van Morrison and okay, I played 91 minutes, I'm out of here.
Right.
I mean, he raised the bar in a way that just was really, really great. And I've obviously been a fan of his for a long time. Listened to everything he's done. Every TV or radio show that I go on, when they're introing me, they play a Bruce Springsteen clip. They need music, they do Springsteen.
Right. Okay. Now, do you know Brad Fay? Are you friendly at all with Brad Fay? So Brad Fay tells me he's seen Bruce over 100 times.
Oh, there are people, yeah.
But that's when you think about that, and I know that you're right. There are people, I saw Fish, 200. Canada Kev saw Grateful Dead 100 times, no problem, right? They toured the band. But I just think that's remarkable that Brad Fay has seen Bruce Springsteen live 100 times.
There's lots of people who've done it. The woman who was serving in the box, I was in a box watching the
Look at you. Who was that 79-year-old who took you to a box?
The guy who can afford to have a box.
I'm impressed.
At Scotiabank.
I'm in the 300 level, but
we were
happy to be there.
We were behind the stage. Well, when you see it tonight, look back behind the stage and up at those boxes. We were right next door to Austin Matthews' box. And I'm sure if he was in town, we'd have spent the concert with him. Anyhow, wow. That's where we were. And the young woman who was serving in the box, she said that her father has seen him over 100 times.
There you go.
And I think that's a bit much. As much as I love him, it's like a box of chocolates. The first few are fantastic, but if you eat the whole box in one go, I don't know.
It's like a religion, right? Though it's like, you're following the congregation or whatever. The United States of Bruce Springsteen.
Well, and he was there. The reason he was loved was at a time when there was a lot of negativity and pessimism in the United States, coming out of Watergate, coming out of the Vietnam War, all sorts of stuff, and it was very easy to dump on America and to be, anti-American in your expressions and in your music, and he made the sort of middle class male experience good again. He made it fun. And yeah, I was grateful to him to do that. And then of course disco came in and pushed him aside a little bit for a few years. But he's abided. What they say, abide with me. That's him.
Yeah, and fun fact, I think you'll know the answer. This is a trivia question I drop with any Springsteen head who's in the room. He has written only one song that reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts.
Yeah.
Can you name that song he wrote that went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts?
Blinded by the Light?
Correct. Okay, good for you. Good for you. Everybody starts running through. They think Dancing in the Dark. They start running through.
He didn't record it either. The hit was Manfred Mann and his
Manfred Mann got it, not Bruce. But
he sounded like
you know what though? I'm impressed.
Guy who's into that stuff.
Okay, so no, good for you. Now I'm curious as a Bruce. So we're gonna do a little Bruce talk off the top. We'll call this Bruce Cast. As a Bruce, do you gravitate, like if there's a great musician named Bruce, do you sort of like him a little more because you have the same first name?
A little bit. I was always curious about how he got his name. His background is Italian and Dutch. The Springsteen's a Dutch name, I think.
Okay.
And that was his father's side. And I think his mother was Italian, and he grew up on the Jersey Shore, which doesn't seem very Bruce-like. I honestly, I don't know where that's coming. Now, my best friend for years was a big concert promoter here in town, a guy named Rob Bennett.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about Rob because I read your book, which we're going to talk about later. Deal with it, the trades that stunned the NHL and changed hockey. And early on, if I call it up, I don't have my glasses on, but you dedicate this book to his memory. Yeah. Gone too soon.
Yeah, he died of ALS last year.
Right.
We were best friends from we met when we were working in 1974 at the LCBO for a Christmas, and we were obviously best friends. And Rob got into promoting through the U of T. He used to promote concerts at Con Hall. At his peak, he was doing the Molson Amphitheater. And one of the tours he did lots of tours, but one of the tours he did was with Springsteen when he was doing his Tom Joad thing. And so Rob took him across the country. And I may have said this before. One Sunday night, I was, of course, working at CBC, and I was doing 6 and 11, and I get a phone call from Rob, and he says, "Get down here, quick." I said, "Rob, it's like 11. I got 2 shows tomorrow. I can't do it." And back and forth we go, and I said, "I just can't do it." And so the next day I said, "Well, what was the big fuss?" He said, "Oh, we were going out for dinner with Springsteen." And so I passed on Springsteen. Anyhow, on the same tour, and this is indicative of Bruce Springsteen, who was a very natural kind of guy. So anyway, he goes to Montreal with Rob, and I guess it's an off night, and they're going around. Rob is showing him old Montreal. I think they go into a couple of clubs, and he stands at the back and listens to people. I don't think he went up there and sang with anybody. And in any event, he's making the scene, etc. And they're walking around, and it's late at night, and he says, "What's that funny thing up in the hill?" And he said, "Well, that's Mount Royal, and that's the cross." "Oh, let's go up there." So Rob gets in the car, I guess a cab or limo, whatever it is. They go up there, and there were a couple of other friends with him, and they have a snowball fight with Bruce Springsteen on Mount Royal. I mean, how real is that? How real is that?
Love it so much.
So that's my anecdote about Bruce Springsteen as a natural man.
Natural man. So I'll see him tomorrow for the first time live.
And his daughter, I should say, by the way. Who is
equestrian?
Equestrian.
Yeah, Olympian.
Where I live in Calgary is right across the highway from Spruce Meadows, and she comes over there.
Oh.
I don't think he goes. I think he's only been once to Spruce Meadows, and Patty, his wife, has gone typically. Although I think she's ill right now, so I don't think she came this season. So yeah,
okay.
He flies back right after the show. They don't stay in town.
Well, I was going to ask because that's Sunday you saw him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm seeing him Wednesday. Well, there's a few days between Sunday and Wednesday. I learned that in junior kindergarten, maybe earlier. And I was wondering because Max Weinberg played the horseshoe, like he stuck around and played the horseshoe. Or what I was and shout out to Robert Lawson who was on this program. He got to meet little Stevie, because he wrote a book about Steven Van Zandt. And if anyone's looking for more on Steven Van Zandt, find the Robert Lawson book. It's very good. And I saw a photo of him and Stevie, having photos and Stevie signing the book and all this.
He's in that documentary on Stevie. Rob's in that documentary.
Oh, Rob Bennett.
No, Rob Lawson.
Robert Lawson.
A fair bit, yeah.
Okay, look
It's
at
on
you.
HBO
Lawson
or something. Yeah.
So just so you know, if you do, you would never. I trust you. I like you. You're a recognized award-winning journalist. But if you did tell a fib on this show, Robert Lawson jumps out of the bushes and fact checks you. Just so you know. So he's the official fact checker of the Toronto Mike.
I'm pretty
Just,
sure
you
it's him that's in the documentary.
Okay, well, I'll find out.
It's a Toronto guy for sure. I remember saying to my wife, "Oh, I know that guy."
Okay, maybe. Well, we'll confirm that later. He'll fact check this fact about him. So, okay, before we leave Bruce Springsteen, because I got a few more Bruce hits, and then we're going to get into this thing. This is all pre-show. We're just warming up here. Tom Wilson, great FOTM. He was in Junk House. I don't know if you're a Tom Wilson fan when it comes to music. So he tells an amazing story. It's in his first appearance on Toronto Mike. Go listen to that. He talks about meeting Bruce Springsteen at Massey Hall and staring at Bruce Springsteen's tits. Those are Tom Wilson's words. I call the story Bruce Springsteen's tits. It's an unbelievable story. Highly recommend to you, Bruce.
The thing I couldn't take my eyes off during the concert, I kept going back to, and you just mentioned him, is Steve Van Zandt. Because, of course, I'm just a Sopranos.
Silvio.
Yeah, Silvio.
Dante.
I'm a Sopranos junkie.
Me too, bud.
And I'm just thinking one of the unlikeliest careers in all of show business. I mean, the documentary talks about his music stuff and how he and Springsteen got there. And literally, they just saw him. David Chase just saw him doing, I think, a
The Rascals.
Yeah,
he was inducting the Rascals into the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
And he said, that guy, I want that guy. And of course, Van Zandt showed up. And what?
And I'm sure you know this fun fact that he auditioned to be Tony Soprano.
Yes.
Which is like, well, they made the right call there. But he's such a good Silvio. I don't think there was a Silvio character originally.
They wrote it for him. Yes. They wrote it for him because they liked him so much, and they want. I just couldn't take my eyes off him. And of course, he's got the bandana thing going on, and
and he does. He often, especially in the earlier seasons, he'd break into his Godfather impressions, right? Like every time I pull away, they suck. Okay, Bruce Springsteen, another Bruce.
Yes.
And I'm gonna just drop 3 names. These are FOTMs, also named Bruce, and I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on them or any relationship at all with these people. So the first Bruce I'm gonna reference because today is the anniversary of his Toronto Mike debut 5 years ago today. Bruce Arthur. What does Bruce Dowbiggin think of Bruce Arthur?
Well, personally or professionally?
Okay, both.
Well, I'm totally at the opposite end of the political spectrum from him.
Right.
And he works at the Toronto Star, and he's doing what the Toronto Star is paying him to do. And I understand that. I totally disagree with him about a lot of stuff. I'm not a Toronto liberal anymore. I was when I was younger, but not so much anymore.
You moved to Calgary. Now, for people, there's 5 episodes of Bruce Dowbiggin on Toronto Mike, so we don't have to cover this in too much detail, but you currently live in Calgary, and how long have you lived in Calgary?
Gosh, it's now almost 25 years. I moved in 1998. Got a job offer to go out there, and I said, yeah, well, I'll grow a third eye, too. What do I want to leave Toronto for?
Right.
And for the first 10 years, it sort of felt foreign. And then after 20 years, you fly back in and you look down there at the prairie and you see the mountains and you go, this is kind of where I belong at the moment. I don't know if that's going to change.
So your thoughts, you mentioned, Toronto Liberal and Toronto Star. And so you were kind of in that mold when you lived here. And then over time, living in Calgary, your thoughts and perspectives on things politically shifted.
I think that I'm a 1970s liberal, large L liberal. I just think that the whole scene has moved to the left. I don't think that my values have particularly changed, but the whole movement towards all sorts of extreme radical positions and stuff, that's not the Liberal Party. That wouldn't have worked in the 1970s for the Canadian Liberal Party. And I certainly don't count myself a liberal now. The Prime Minister is way out there on another limb. And I don't think I'm necessarily a Pierre Poilievre lover. Most of what I do is I try to watch the way politics are covered in Canada and the United States and critique that. Because none of the politicians are perfect. I don't have a vested interest in any of them. I'm not going to be any better off, I might be worse off if Trump loses and they shut down Elon Musk and X. I might lose a platform there. But by and large, I just try to watch the way they're covered. Yeah. And well, gosh. Just the whole idea of freedom of the press and where we've gone, and it's really quite interesting that we've gotten to this point in this election where they've talked about it's either or. And Musk says, I think I'll be in jail 6 months after if Kamala gets elected. And Trump says, you'll be in my cabinet. It's a real either or thing. Anyhow, in any event, I watched mostly that and how the media covers politics. And that's what really sort of intrigues me. And I try not to be too invested. Certainly people, oh yeah, Trump lover, this and that.
Well, people are surprised I have you in my basement for like whatever, we're going to chat for 90 minutes or something today. Yeah. And I actually am surprised. They're surprised only because, and I think I tweeted something to this effect just before you arrived when I said we were going to be live streaming at live.torontomike.com, is that I do read what you write, not the public broadcaster. Is that the name of the?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm subscribed to the RSS feed and I read what you write. And more often than not, I passionately disagree with everything you wrote, but I defend your right to say it. And I'm open to having a civil discourse on the topic where even though we're on different ends and I might be more aligned with Bruce Arthur than I am Bruce Dowbiggin, I'm happy to see you and have a chat, not just about hockey and not just about Alan Eagleson, which we'll cover later in this conversation, but what's going on right now with Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre and everything. Like, I feel like we can have civil discourse even if we aren't aligned.
What was the title of the column when I was here the last time? I wrote a column after the last time I was here. The headline was, why did you have him on? That was the head.
Yeah, right. And but I get a lot of like.
I respect that.
And I'm like, well, firstly, I have on who I want to have on. Like, I don't answer to anybody. This is not the public broadcaster either. And if I want to talk to Bruce Dowbiggin, so what are you in town for? Like, what brought you to Toronto? You're a Calgary guy, and you're here in the big smoke.
Well, I'm doing a little bit of a tour for my book, Deal With It. How the trades that stunned the NHL and changed hockey that I co-wrote with my son, Evan.
So I want to talk about this book in a moment, but I will tell you that for a period of time, I had copies I gave to guests and many notes of people saying they love the book. And one guy I want to shout out, I took a note. I want to shout out, you mentioned not the public broadcaster. Well, a guy who worked many years for the public broadcaster is Robert Fisher.
I know Robert.
So Robert got a copy when he visited. His episode's epic. I don't use that word lightly. Got to listen to the Robert Fisher episode of Toronto Mike. He's told me multiple times what a big fan he is of Deal With It, the trades that stunned the NHL and changed hockey. He loves it. I've seen on Facebook he's been posting about it.
Robert's a great guy. We had two people named Robert Fisher in the newsroom at the same time. And did he tell the story? I don't know.
Oh, tell it now. I can't remember.
Well, there was another guy who was Robert Fisher, and your Robert Fisher had a reputation as being a really great, terrific journalist and was well respected, etc. And the other Robert Fisher really wasn't highly respected in the newsroom, and so everyone called him Fake Fisher. And they'd say, "Is Fake working tonight?" And nobody wanted to work with the guy because he wasn't particularly reliable.
One had to go.
Yeah, well, I know that. I think the Fake lasted well longer than Robert. Robert
was at Global. He went to Global.
Yeah.
And there was a whole scandal when he exited Global, and then he reemerged with CBC Radio.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. We disagree on politics. He's a liberal, a small L liberal, and I disagree with that. But that's with some of those things. But the essence of it is that he and I disagree, but we can talk. And that's all I really want.
Well, that's all we're doing today, because we will talk about Deal With It, and I want to talk about Alan Eagleson.
Because free speech, again, free speech is not for what you like. It's for what you don't like. You allow free speech because you have to hear things you don't like from time to time. Now, there are things that obviously are beyond the pale, but by and large, if you want to sit there and tell me how the Kamala Harris is a wonderful person, I respect your right to say that, and away you go. And hopefully you will say the same thing about me when I talk about Pierre Poilievre as opposed to Trudeau or whatever. Right. That's what makes free speech. That's how we got here.
But free speech. But you moments ago you referenced you said the name Elon Musk and you mentioned X, which if it's okay with you, I'm calling it Twitter. Okay, so Twitter.
Why so bitter?
Because X is a stupid name and Twitter was a great name, and it's not like it's a person.
Is that your only complaint?
Yeah, X is a stupid name. I liked Twitter. I still call it Twitter, whatever. I still tweet. I don't X. When Elon Musk, on his platform, which he paid good money to own, so his
44 billion.
How many?
44.
Wasn't it 4?
No, 44.
Okay.
He way overpaid.
Okay, wow.
At the time.
Okay, well, yeah, I can't remember anymore, but he sure did. So he overpaid for this platform, but you don't have to be Robert Lawson to go through the tweets from Elon Musk to see many of these tweets are bald-faced lies that are amplified on his platform. Like freedom of speech is one thing, but when he's using his popular social media app to amplify complete inventions, like
Such as?
pieces of fake. Well, I didn't document it, but they're bald-faced lies. They aren't even debatable. You must
Just one.
Which one?
Just one. Give me just one.
Oh, I have to go. I mean, you will force me onto X to find the Elon Musk feed, which I'm trying to avoid today. But I mean, you're not cool with lies, right? You're just telling me you have the right to have an opinion. Opinions are opinions. But when you state something as fact, which is easily disprovable, you're not cool with that, right, Bruce?
Well, some things were lies, and then they became the truth because times changed. I mean, Galileo was lying about the sky and the stars.
Is he on Twitter?
Well, then he
He's
wasn't.
a good follow.
Then he wasn't. There's a bunch of things that were lies that were perpetuated online that are now that we know it to be true. I mean, the whole thing about vaccinations. We were told that we'd need one, maybe two, and we'd be free for life. And our prime minister told us all those things, and they were lies.
Yeah.
And okay, he's a politician. He's got a right to lie. They all do, but the truth comes out eventually, thank God, about things. And I think you have to reserve the right for people to disagree about something contentious, really contentious like that.
I know, but look, with science, these things do change, right? As we learn more about, this virus we hadn't seen before. So is it fair to say you're not getting, because I have an appointment on Thursday. I made sure it was Thursday so it didn't mess with my Bruce Springsteen concert, because I know you can get some effects. But I'm getting the double shot power. I'm going to get the flu shot and the COVID 19 vaccination on Thursday. Is it fair to say you're not participating?
You know what I think of that? That's your right.
Right.
And God bless.
Okay.
I will not take any
So
more. I had
you're
two of them.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, I nearly died of a pulmonary embolism, pulmonary
So you connect. I'm glad you survived.
Blood clots
first of
are
all.
something that seem to be endemic to these
Well, you're talking
things.
to a guy who had a blood clot on his brain.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting the vaccination. So
No, and again, you're right. If you think it makes you feel better, that's what's most important.
See, what I'm doing is I'm trusting in the overwhelming percentage of medical doctors who say this will help you to get lesser symptoms and have less effects from COVID. I know people who have had long COVID, and it sounds horrific. And if I can avoid that, I think I'll be better off. So to me, I treat it like I would treat. I just turned 50, so I go to the doctor. What does that mean? He goes. She said two things basically.
Pull down your pants.
You now get a colonoscopy.
Yes.
And I said, I actually got one when I was 49. So I said, okay, I'm clear for 10 years. I did that one. And then she said, well, if you pay out of pocket, you can now get the shingles vaccination because it's free when you're 65. But from 50, you can get it, but you got to pay, I don't know, a couple $100 a shot or something like that.
Ontario, it's free. It's not free in Calgary. The shingles
After
virus.
65?
Yeah. Now, we had to pay through our insurance.
Okay, through your insurance.
It's another reason to live in Toronto.
Well, here in Ontario, with 65 plus, I think you get the Shingrix.
Anyhow,
They call it. But to me, I asked the doctor. I trust my doctor, and I said, "Would you recommend I get it now that I'm 50?" And she said, "Yes, because you don't want shingles."
Yeah, you don't.
So basically, I will get that as well. She put
Did
a
you have
prescription.
chicken pox when you were a kid?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, then you need to do this because it means you've got the virus somewhere in you.
Yeah, so I don't want shingles, so I will get this vaccination. It's like 2 shots over 6 months. I can't remember, but I'll pay out of pocket for that because I don't have insurance when it comes to meds. So I will do that because I put that in the flu shot. I will get because my doctor recommends a flu shot, and I will get the COVID vaccination for the same reasons.
Yeah.
But so your opinion on this is to each his own. Just don't mandate it.
Yeah,
this is
the mask. It's like the
take.
mask thing. It's like the mask thing. When I still see people wearing masks walking on the street, God bless them. If you feel that makes you better, that's fine. Just don't tell me I have to wear a mask unless you can give me absolute proof that this is a reason that will save me. And
So-
of course, that just didn't work out.
My take is not as far from yours as you'd imagine, except I do give a lot of space for like this unknown virus that's starting to overwhelm the system. Maybe the system is flawed, but regardless, like in that period of time, I'd rather exercise on the side of caution. And I feel like that was the right move at that time.
I forgive people for the first 3 months of it, the panic. I understand the panic. I mean, they used the panic to intimidate our prime minister and the president of the United States. The healthcare people said this could be the Spanish flu, hundreds of thousands of people die, whatever. Right. But after that, I think we started to know enough about it that we didn't have to let people die, old people die in old folks' homes and not have their families there. Somebody put them on the phone when they died, etc.
I'm with you.
Yeah, and the lockdown stuff. It's people coming from the airport and being stuck in a hotel for 3 days with people in hazmat suits and all that. You know,
well, my concern, Bruce,
way too far.
My concern was because the kill rate. This is going to sound terrible. In my head as I form it, I realize this is going to sound callous here, but the kill rate wasn't high enough for this measure. What are you going to do when you get a real virus that's, I don't know, knocking out 20% of people who get it or something? Like, where do you go from here? You kind of shot your load there, and now it's like people are going to resist it next time and won't do it again.
Well, it doesn't mean you're skeptical about all vaccines. I take vaccines. I've taken vaccines, and I will continue to take ones that have been proven.
Okay, pull down your sleeve. I've got a surprise for you.
Oh, God.
I just vaccinated Bruce.
Ouch, that hurt. But I'm prepared to take each one at its value and see what happens. This one, unfortunately, and you know, I was following it from a sports point of view, and the people at the NFL who were in charge of the NFL's health, they were talking about the PCR test, and this thing fried me. 2 years into the virus, we still had people coming on saying, and this morning 1,100 new PCR positives. When they knew that most of them were false positives, that you couldn't get sick and you couldn't pass it on, but they weren't telling people that at the point at which they knew it, and we panicked everybody, and so it made it easy to get do stupid stuff. That's what bothered me.
Look, you're talking to a guy who one day I woke up and learned my kids couldn't play, and I had pretty young kids at the time. They couldn't go to the playground and play on the slides and the swings, okay? Yeah. So a lot of people, hey, Mike, you bike a lot. You're this bleeding heart lefty or whatever, but I was like, no. Outside, my thought through the whole time, based on the science I understood from the experts I listened to, was go outside. I was thinking we should have school outside. Like, I don't want my kids zooming in for grade 1. There was nothing worse than a kid zooming in for senior kindergarten, okay? I had to witness it. Can we all put on maybe a thick sweater and a jacket and a snowsuit, and can we have classes in the park outside or whatever? Like, move it outside.
Those are my feelings about it too. And we knew fairly early on that kids were not vulnerable to this. There were going to be children who died of it, but not in any numbers to justify what the social remedy was. But they were worried
they'd bring that home to grandma, I think, was a bigger concern.
But fat people apparently died a lot more of COVID. But nobody ever said anything about it. In fact, the biggest morbidity was in fat people. But nobody ever said, "Oh, you're a fat person, lose weight." But they did tell you to go into your house, put a mask on, and don't talk to your family. And if your father's dying, you can't go see him. And so we were just making it up as we went along. And what concerns me is that some people have seen how that they can work public opinion and panic people. And there are some people out there who I think might want to do that on some other causes.
What I like, Bruce, about live.torontomike.com, I'm not sure when I brought that into the fold. Shout out to Ian Service, but maybe it's new for your appearances, possibly. I don't know. But you get real-time feedback, so I just want to read a couple real quick. So Moose Grumpy, I'm just going to read verbatim, and you can respond to Moose Grumpy live at live.torontomike.com. Seriously, Bruce? Vaccine denier? It was an evolving situation. How were they to know how many we needed at the time? So that's a reference. You said Trudeau lied when he said you only needed a couple of shots. But it was evolved. I agree with Moose that you don't know what you don't know till you know it, right? That's not a lie.
President Biden said if you take 2, that you won't need any more, etc. I'm just saying this is the information we got. And for Grumpy, I agree with them. I mean, we didn't know in the early part, but we were told things that they knew not to be true. Not to be true in terms of how reliable the vaccine was.
Wait, is that Robert Lawson coming in from the bushes? Okay.
No, I don't want to relitigate the whole thing.
We won't relitigate it. I'll just read.
But as social engineering goes, it was quite an interesting experience.
Well, Andrew Ward says, if it makes you feel better, and makes you feel better is a quote I guess you just dropped. Come on, do better. That was Andrew. And then Burlington Rob says, seatbelts used to be optional too. And you can smoke all you want knowing it might give you cancer. We always think we went too far after the effing fact. You swearing, Rob? That's not like you.
No.
He says life is making it up as you go along. Anyways, we'll move on from the vaccination debate.
Seatbelts were proven to work. That's why I use them.
Oh yeah. Oh, listen.
Somebody tells me to do that and tells me not to smoke. I
Do you
agree.
wear a bike helmet?
I agree.
Because that's a legally optional
I
thing.
don't bike anymore.
You don't bike anymore.
But in my days of biking around Toronto, this is the mid-'70s, I wore a toque in the winter and a baseball hat in the summer.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was biking
Rugged
out in the 80s and
individuals.
90s, I never touched a helmet either.
Yeah.
It's wild when I think back, but
And now my kids, we put the elbows, my grandkids, is elbow pads and knee pads. I was down in New Brunswick with my 3 grandchildren down there, and it's like,
yeah.
bundling them up in the
The suit of armor?
packaging. No, the packaging with the bubbles in it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, to each his own, as we say. But the helmet for kids is mandatory according to the bylaws. But okay, so
and it's proven to work.
and I'm gonna zip through because Bruce Arthur got us on a tangent there. But I just curious, are you aware of radio veteran Bruce Barker?
Yeah, I know Barks very
So
well.
Barks, FOT. I'm running. This is Bruce Cast. I haven't even moved on yet. But so Bruce Arthur. Oh, and you mentioned you disagree with him on like politically. But what do you think of him?
Personally,
You've never had any fisticuffs? Because I know that
he's a very gentle kind of guy, as far as I remember.
well, you know who wants to beat him up? I would pay to see this tilt. I think my money might be on Arthur, but Strachan. Al Strachan, Bruce Arthur. There is a great Canadian sports media rivalry.
So I've told you this story before.
Tell me.
There are 4 conservatives in the Canadian sports media.
Can I name them? Bruce Dowbiggin, Steve Buffery, Al Strachan. I'm not sure who your 4th is.
And 2 of them aren't talking to each other. Well, actually, I'd talk to Strack if he would talk to me. And the irony is, and I think I said this
So
to you.
you're on his shit list too.
Well, everyone
But who's the
is.
4th?
So, who is the 4th? I'm trying to remember. It'll come to me.
It might be Jennifer Hedger from what I've been reading.
Oh, maybe, possibly. I don't know Jennifer personally, but so anyway, the funny part about Strack is that he moved in about 100 paces away from our place down in Florida, and so I see him out on the golf course.
I remember now.
And he studiously avoids me. His wife
God.
is very kind and very nice to us, and my daughter got married Labor Day weekend here in Toronto. She got married to Eric Duhatschek's son.
What a small world.
I know. So Eric and I laugh about how small it was.
That's
And
funny.
Eric is he's between me and Strack. I mean, he communicates to me what's going on with Strack.
He's like the linchpin there or
Yeah.
something.
One of the loveliest, great people in media. He's apolitical guy. He really is apolitical, and is wonderful, has good things
Is he
to
the
say about
Steve
everybody.
Paikin of your friends there? Or no, because Steve Paikin would be the Steve Paikin of your buddies.
Well, I'm seeing Paik on Friday. But yeah, Paik's one of those guys who's just amenable to everybody. And the list
But
of
he
people...
has to appear that way because he needs to moderate these debates. And
he should, absolutely.
Okay, so I did text. I will tell you, I texted this morning Steve Paikin. Mr. Dowbiggin is my guest at 10:30. Do you have a message for me to convey to him? And the reply I see is, thinking. So I was 10:35. So here we are at 11 o'clock. And he never came out. He couldn't. Come on,
busy.
Paikin.
He's probably busy. We did
Is today a big day for some reason? Is there something going on today? I can't remember. We'll get back to that.
We did an immortal edition of this show in which
yes.
I'm trying to remember. He was Frank Sinatra.
He
and
was
I guess I was
Sinatra.
Tony Bennett.
You were Tony Bennett.
And who was better?
And who was better? Oh, yeah, great episode. And I redistributed it when Tony Bennett passed away, and it got like a second life.
Oh, great!
It was a very, very great tribute there. Okay,
I'll see Steve on Friday morning.
okay. He was at TMLX 16 at GLB Brew Pub, and that was on October 21st. And it was great to see Steve Paikin there. I don't think he can make TMLX 17, but Bruce, if you're in town visiting, but there's one coming up on November 30th. I don't know if you'll be in Calgary or if you'll be visiting
In Florida.
Okay, you'll be in Florida. That's a long way to go to get your free Palma pasta and your fresh beer from Great Lakes Brewery.
I'm going. Yeah, we're here we're house sitting in Toronto for 2 weeks. House sitting a dog and a bird, and then we're going.
What does that entail exactly? You got to clean that cage once in
This
a
is
while.
a bird that whistles.
Okay.
If you're happy and you know it. I can't believe it. You take the sheet off in the morning, and this damn bird starts singing.
Well, at least the sheet shuts that bird up. That sounds fun until you're trying to get some sleep.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's Otis the bird, and Otis goes to sleep at night, but he whistles.
Was Otis named after Otis Redding?
I don't know what the Otis reference was. My daughter-in-law named him. She got him, and now her parents take care of Otis most of the time because she has my granddaughter to cope with.
Now, shout out to Barks. We mentioned him. And then my final Bruce FOTM, okay? This is the whole list. So to review, Bruce Dowbiggin, Bruce Arthur, Bruce Barker, excuse me, and Bruce Croxon, who helped, he founded Lava Life, made some big bucks, and he became a dragon on Dragon's Den.
Yep.
So I don't know if you've met
Don't know.
Bruce Croxon. Okay. And there's a Bruce that I've been trying to get for years now, but has eluded me somehow. So I'm going to put this into the universe. If anyone out there can get a message to Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall.
Oh.
I'm trying to get Bruce McCullough on Toronto Mike.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You ever met Bruce McCullough?
No, but I used to be friends with, oh gosh, I forgot which one of them he was.
Mark McKinney.
No.
Dave Foley.
No.
Kevin McDonald.
No.
Scott Thompson.
No. One of them. Well, maybe it was,
I think I've named them all.
yeah, no,
Like
I
five,
guess
right?
now I'm thinking of somebody in another comic group. Anyhow, his daughter and my son were going to elementary school together, and we would be there in the park in the parking lot every day, waiting for our kids to come out, and we'd chat with them.
Okay, but not memorable enough for you to know. Mr. Canoehead, that's not Kids in the Hall. That's Four on the Floor. No, the Frantics.
The Frantics. It was the Frantics.
Okay,
yes.
they were great too, actually. I love the Mr. Canoehead stuff. Okay. Diamond Dog writes in, does Bruce think the MAGA movement is hurt by its loyalty to Trump? Wouldn't the policies they stand for be better served and represented by having a less off-putting leader? And does Pierre Poilievre have actual policy solutions beyond slogans and memes? We already know what the problems are. So take a moment and respond to Diamond Dog, who's listening. I don't think Diamond Dog's on the live stream, but we'll hear us later.
What was the
today.
first part again?
Does Bruce think the MAGA movement is hurt by its loyalty to Trump?
See, the misunderstanding that liberals have about MAGA is that somehow Trump has forced his values on them. But what I try to explain is that the base has felt about all these issues for a long time. But they allowed the Republicans to nominate stiffs like Mitt Romney and Bob Dole and people like that. They've always felt this way about the border, about security, about foreign wars, etc. And when it came to the 2012 election, the Democrats made Mitt Romney out to be like an axe murderer. Oh, remember, he had a dog on his roof.
Oh, right.
And the insurance, he didn't give insurance to some woman who died of cancer. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people in the base of the Republican Party say, okay, that's enough. We're not going to nominate nice guys anymore. We're going to nominate somebody who will fight on our behalf. And Trump didn't believe in any of these things. I mean, if you go back 15 minutes before he said he believed in them, he didn't believe in them. But what he did recognize is that no one in the Republican Party was willing to take all of those issues forward. So the border, well, you know what they are, the border, the foreign wars, tariffs, China, etc. Nobody wanted to take them. Marco Rubio could have been the president of the United States if he just decided to do that. But the Republican Party, the mainline Republican Party, was too aligned with D.C. and all the values there. So Trump picked it up. He's a carny. Hey, I'll take that. He became president by espousing maybe 5 or 6 different issues. So the base defines Trump, not the other way around. Would they like somebody who's a little bit more polished, who everyone would love? Yeah, probably. But nobody else was willing to do this, to go bare knuckles with the establishment in Washington, the intelligence establishment. Look what they've done in terms of charging them for all these things. Who would, knowing that in advance, who would go into this? But Trump was just Goomba enough to do it. So I just think the misinterpretation of Trump is probably... people just don't understand how he came to be and what his significance is. And there will be a MAGA movement. Well, maybe there won't be tomorrow. There will be a MAGA movement, or I presume, after Trump is gone. And it will be people like J.D. Vance and people who will take it forward. I'd love for Vance to be the guy who's running this time for the Republicans. I think he's much more intelligent, and he articulates the same stuff. And yeah.
But again, we have a guy who I heard double down on they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats thing, even after
he's just punking you. He's just punking everybody.
So if they lie, it's punking. I just want to understand.
What happened to the left and your sense of humor? I mean, obviously,
you're right. It's hilarious.
The guy says all this outrageous stuff, and he punks the daylights out of it. And then the left MSNBC spends a week talking about this and doing his bidding. I mean, it works for him because he gets you talking about what he wants you to talk about. Would I say those things? No, I wouldn't say those things.
Dale Cadeau is listening.
Oh, my buddy Dale.
So Dale Cadeau says, I just think I tweeted something like, make sure you tune in for Bruce. And then he said, certainly will. It's a most interesting day tomorrow for a chat. So he tweeted that obviously yesterday.
Yep.
But shout out to Dale Cadeau, who once came over. Lou Caw's son, Matthew Caws, and gifted Matthew Caws some expensive wine, I believe, when Matthew Caws was on Toronto Mike. So he came out of the bushes with wine in his hands.
Dale's a good man.
Dale's a good guy. Dale.
And so's Matt.
Matt's a good guy. Yeah, of course. Dale's a good guy. And Dale, I know your mom's in Streetsville. If you're in town November 30th, just to put a highlight on this, everyone's invited. Even you, Dale. Even you, Bruce. I know you're in Florida. You won't be there. But your son could come out. It is Palma's Kitchen in Mississauga. And Palma will feed you. Palma Pasta will feed you. And I'll bring some fresh beer from Great Lakes. We'll do a live recording, get everybody on the mic and say hi, have a festive spirit in the room.
He'll come for the beer. My son will come for the beer.
Come for the beer. Heck, the Palma Pasta meal is delicious. And you can choose from the hot table what you want. And yeah, he'd love it. So
that should be your slogan for this. Come for the beer, come for the pasta, stay for the tape measure.
That is yours, Bruce. Thanks for mentioning the Ridley Funeral Home tape measure. Measure what you wish with that. So it's yours. Thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. Life's Undertaking is the name of Brad Jones's podcast. And you should subscribe and listen because Brad talks about life and death and he normalizes it all. Because, Bruce, here's a fact. I know you almost died. I was going to say, so did they put you on blood thinners?
Oh, yeah. I still am.
Yeah, me too.
I tried to get off.
We have that in common.
There you go. Well, I don't know what they told me.
I tried to get off too. What happened when you went off? Did you have an episode?
I didn't do anything until I talked. The doctor at the clinic in Toronto, in Calgary, goes on mat leave for a year. So there's and I phone up and I said, well, I'd like to find out, can I get off of the blood thinners? And she's, well, wait till she comes back. So a year later, she comes back and I said, I'd really like to get rid of them. And she says, well, in your case, 30% of the people who've had what you've had go off it, they die.
That's a high number. That's way higher than COVID-19's kill rate.
So, and again, you're talking about science and medicine. I was willing to take that advice. So I'm still taking them.
Okay, so I'm glad you listened. Okay, so similarly, I was on blood thinners because I had a blood clot on my brain.
How did you develop it? You probably told this story before.
Well, I don't mind sharing because it's very easy. Basically, I had 4 days of a headache where it was like compression all around, like where my hands are, which people can't see in the podcast, but complete compression for 4 days. And I kind of was plowing through it thinking it's a migraine. And then I went to my wife, thought, like, we had all these theories. And finally, I talked to my doctor, Brilliant Mike, on day 4 of this headache that wouldn't budge. And I don't get migraines typically. So it was really strange, but I was still biking through it and swimming through it and recording. I did episodes of Toronto Mike with this blood clot pain or whatever. So day 4, I talked to my doctor and she says, Mike, I remember this very clearly. She said, my worry is you've got bleeding on the brain. I would sleep better tonight if you went straight to emergency. She said, I'm going to fax over a rec thing so they know what's coming. And I went straight over to St. Joe's emergency. And the guy, like, literally, the emergency room doctor was kind of chuckling a little bit like, oh, it's probably a migraine. But to make your doctor feel better, I'm going to get a CAT scan and we'll see what's going on there. Like an hour later, he calls me in a room and he looks kind of nervous and he goes, I'm so sorry. I was very wrong. You have something that's very rare. He gives me the proper name. I can't remember, pulmonary, whatever. And he goes, and I'm like, I'm not sure what we're saying here. And I'm kind of trying to process it in real time. And then he explains, I have a blood clot on my brain and I need to go into the stroke ward right now. Like, I'm not going home that night. I'm going to go to the stroke ward because a stroke, I'm in very high danger of having a stroke from this blood clot in the brain. And I went to the stroke ward and spent the night. Anyway, I never had a stroke, so there's the good news. But I did get put on blood thinners, and then after a while, this hematologist, this story's boring me, because I told it too many times, but the hematologist tested me for every test they have.
Yes.
I think she's very good at her job, but every test that they have to see what clotting disorder I have. And I tested negative for every single test they have. And then, of course, they start looking for other things like cancer and all these things. They're searching for what it is. They found nothing, so she says, you can stop. This is after many months. She says, you can stop taking the blood thinners now. You tested negative for everything. It was just like 1 in a million fluke or whatever. And then, like, literally, like, I don't know, 6 weeks after I stopped taking these blood thinners, I got another blood clot. And then she said, okay, you've got your second blood clot. You have something that causes blood clots, but we don't have a test for it yet. We're inventing new tests all the time, but you will take your blood thinner, this is her word, indefinitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's code for forever.
Yeah.
So I take 2 pills a day for the rest of my life, I guess.
I don't want to belabor this, but I was in the same denial thing as you. Your denial, this is a guy thing, right? So my wife had her knee done, and I was supposed to be the nurse carrying her around, whatever, all that sort of stuff. And it's getting close to Christmas, And at this point, I was on high blood pressure medicine, and it makes you dizzy once in a while. Anyhow, so I'm taking care of my wife, and then one day I'm walking up the stairs, and I walk into the washroom, and I faint. And I fall to the floor, and I bang my head on the floor, and I wake up, and there's my wife looking at me like, what's the matter? I said, must be these stupid high blood pressure things. And I get up, and I go into the living room, and I faint again.
Wow.
And I'm like, and I'm worried about it, but I'm thinking, I'm a guy. It's these stupid pills because I've felt this way before.
Right.
So short story long, I spend like you did. I spend the next week taking care of my wife, spending Christmas doing things.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve day, I'm sitting there in my office, and I said to my wife, I said, call the EMS. I can't do this. And they showed up, and they did the oxygen test. And you're supposed to be at least 92, 93, 94. I was 85 or 86. And I had the firemen over here, and I had the EMS people over here wrestling for the honor of taking me to the hospital. And I had that experience that you had where I thought, they'll just give me some medication, and I'll just go home today because it's the holidays, it's New Year's Day. And they said, you ain't going home.
And you got shit to do, right?
Yeah, I had a life.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
Well, so I stayed for 4 days, and then I went back because blah, 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 blah. And I was sitting there, I think, 2 days later, my wife sprayed something. I can't remember what she sprayed in the house. And all of a sudden, my system went into panic, and bang, right back in it for 5 days.
Wow.
This time. And I said to the guy, I don't want to be in the hospital. The guy in the room next to me is the same room. He's dying.
Okay, so just on that note, I'm in the stroke ward that night, and I biked to the hospital. Like, I felt great, except I had a headache.
Yeah.
I just had a headache, right? And they shot me full of something that got rid of the headache. So literally, I felt 100%. Like, I'd never felt better in my life. And the guy beside me I heard him take off his diaper and take a piss on the floor. Like, that's, and then the nurse said, I like you. She was, because you're my only patient who's mobile.
Yeah.
Like, everyone had mobility issues. Like, if you have to go to the washroom, they're going to have to help get you to the washroom. And anyways, so I totally relate to that whole.
I wasn't allowed to get out of bed. I was bed rest.
Strapped you down
while I was in there. And so anyhow, the guy next to me, literally, he's dying. And he's coughing, whatever, all night. And I said to the guy in the morning, it was a male nurse, I said, I got to get out of here. I said, just give me the pills. I'll go home. I'll be a good boy. I'll take the pills. He said, if you go home right now, you're going to die. And I said, well, I guess I'm in the hospital for a few more days. And I was for a few more days. And when they released me, my daughter picked me up, and the doctor said to my daughter, you know how close your father came. And
wow.
This is radio, but you can see how close my fingers are together.
Well, just, should it have happened, I would have done a lovely tribute for you in the Toronto Mike feed, okay? There would have been that would have been nice. We lost the great FOTM.
This is 2022. Okay. So, and since then, nothing. But yeah, I want to get off the pills. I don't like taking pills. I don't have to. But I will take pills that work.
Well, it sounds like you have to take. Yeah, it sounds like you're not against science when it helps you. You just don't like being told what to do with masks and vaccinations.
Just tell me what the proof of why it works and why it doesn't, and I'm an easy guy to please.
But you do acknowledge that science evolves, right? As we learn more, as they discover, as the hematologist, as they invent new tests, and the hematologist can test for different genetic, there could be different evolution of your treatments.
I have a friend who's a radiological interventionist. He's a Canadian guy from Kingston, and he works in a hospital in Huntsville, and he's got all this machinery that Siemens and Philips has invented. And if he gets you in the morning, because you're talking about strokes, if he gets you in the morning, he will literally go through your blood system and remove clots in your brain. And you will walk out the next day as if nothing really happened. So I am completely open to the idea that science is evolving. And
give me that guy's number.
Yeah. Well, it's too late for you.
Well, now apparently my only concern now is don't crash your bike because you'll bleed out internally. Like, this is the whole thing. Don't cut yourself and don't get And I don't know if they told you on the blood thinners, no more contact sports. Did you get that messaging? Like, I can't. They don't want me playing a pickup game of ice hockey.
Yeah. No, because if you got cut with a blade.
And also, I guess, trauma to the body, internally you bleed. Like, in fact, my doctor said, because it's only a matter of time. I have been biking like crazy for over a decade, and it's only a matter of time. You do crash your bike, even if you're careful. So, because I bike a lot. So when I do crash my bike, he said, go straight to ER. He said, go straight to ER when you crash your bike. So it's like every single day, I'm like, okay, will today be the day I gotta, miss my my recording with Bruce because I'm in the ER.
Well, the difference between you and me is that you're 50, and they look at you and say, well, he's a healthy guy. We should tell him not to do this and this and this because he might think he's healthy. I'm 70 years old. They looked at me and they said, I don't think we have to tell him not to play industrial hockey anymore.
No moshing for you.
No, and no touch football and none of those things. And so if golf and swimming can kill me, then I guess I'm going to die.
Those are your sports, absolutely.
My activities to keep from
swimming. I always say that, if worse comes to worse, I'll just swim every day.
It's the best.
That is the best, right?
And you know what?
impact.
I found these headphones that now work underwater. The T-bone things that put the sound through your cheeks. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask for more info on this later because I love to swim. I would swim more, except I spend too much time on the bike, and now I got a kayak, and I've been out kayaking. It's like you only have so many hours for these leisure activities.
And people don't know that you weigh 300 pounds. It's amazing. No.
It's all muscle, though. It's all muscle. So in terms, we're talking bodies and science. So one of the things that I find gross about the Republicans in the U.S. again, I don't have a vote. I'm not American. I live here in Toronto. So I'm just watching as like because it affects me, and because it's like you're the pimple on the back. What is it when you sleep with an elephant, when they roll over? No, when they sneeze. What's the expression?
You catch a cold, right?
Yeah, okay. So I'm watching very closely, and I have a vested interest. But what are your thoughts, Bruce Dowbiggin? And I promise we'll turn to other topics soon. Body autonomy. So just strictly on the fact that I keep hearing rhetoric about a nationwide ban on abortion. Like, what are your thoughts on a woman's body autonomy and that movement in the United States?
Well, there isn't a national ban on it.
No, it's state by state right now.
What Roe v. Wade said, and they looked at the Constitution and said this is a states' rights thing for them to decide. And so each of these states is allowed to decide. And what's interesting to me is that some of the most conservative states that you would have thought would say absolutely not are in fact passing laws that give women bodily autonomy. And, I'm in the, if you look at the polling, that 12 to 15 week region, that seems to be a point at which a lot of people would support, some sort of abortion law. So 12 to 15 weeks. That's what they have in Europe. This is also what gets me about Canada and the United States. Europe has laws about abortion, when you can do it, when you can't. And it seems like we're locked into this whole, nothing or everything thing. So I would like to see something in around that level. And it looks like a number of states are starting to move in that direction. Do I want to say Kansas or Missouri? One of them, anyhow, which is a conservative state, has rejected like a 6-week ban, a 6-week law, and all that type of thing. I would like to see it go that way. I understand the Christians and people who feel the sanctity of life. I understand their feelings on it. I also understand that the women's autonomy, etc. That the women should have the say about it. Although it's all sort of undermined by the fact, getting back to the vaccines. Yes, women can't be told what to put into their body unless it's a vaccine. We had that whole contradiction. Oh, by the way, you have to take the vaccine, or you're going to lose your job, or you're going to lose whatever. So, I mean, there was a kind of a mixed signal.
But at least that wasn't gender-based.
Yeah. But, listen, I grew up in the era when the laws came in that you could have abortion. And I can remember one of my friends in high school, he and his girlfriend, obviously she got pregnant, and we all had to pony up money, and we drove him to New York State so that his girlfriend could have an abortion. That was the way things were in the 60s. But it has evolved a lot from there. I think there is a sensible middle. I wish they could find it without my help. But right now it's just wow. It's any politician who takes this on too his career or her career can end really quickly.
So there's a sort of a thought out there that possibly there are women married to Republican men who are maybe with pollsters and publicly saying they're going to vote Trump.
You're going to do this.
Well, let me ask, and then. There is this floating that when they're in the privacy of the voting booth and your private vote that they'll vote for Kamala Harris for president.
This happened in I think this happened in 2020 and 2022. I don't think there were women who told pollsters that they were going to vote for Trump and then they changed their mind. I think a lot of them actively considered it. They had husbands who were going to vote that way. But I think a lot of women, and pollsters will tell you, especially 2022, which is the midterms, went into the poll booth and said, no, I can't do it. And so they changed their vote. And that will be something that will be really interesting to see the numbers on this coming out. This is the Democrats' big thing.
Right.
Oh, there's a whole wave of women out there who we don't know about, who aren't reaching polls. Because, of course, on the Republican side, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of about 16 to 20% of Republicans will not respond to a pollster. So they don't really know what numbers they've got on the Republican side because, by and large, they're hostile to the pollsters. But if this huge group of women emerges, we could see a whole change in the election. And believe me, this is a cultural clash between educated white women who seem to be dominating the thought process in the Democratic Party and the traditional kind of Republican male-oriented party that it's been.
So before I move on, because I am moving off Trump now, got a lot of ground to cover. If he leaks into future, convos here, we'll see. But can you make a prediction? Because I think it'd be fun to have you time stamped at 11:23 a.m., where we have no results in at this point, of course. But someone's going to listen tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a lot more info at our disposal. Hopefully, make a call, man. Let's have a prediction from Bruce Dowbiggin on this American election.
Honestly, I don't have all the information for what you just said.
Of course not. It's a guess. Well, a prediction.
Well, there is a thought that there are a lot of people who are the illegal immigrants who have gotten the ability to vote, and that they may be a factor in this election.
Are they eating the cats and the dogs, Bruce? I need to know.
I love the music videos. Come on, you have to love some of the mashups.
They're eating the dogs.
They're eating the dogs. Anyhow, people, the pollsters who I like and trust say this is razor thin. And again, for people, Canadians, we don't understand this, but it's 50 separate elections. Each state has electoral college votes, and that's why it's saying, well, she leads them by 2 points in the general election. Doesn't matter. It's state by state. So it will come down to Pennsylvania. And what I'm hearing is, at least from the early voting, the pre-voting, is that the Republicans have done really well, and there seems to be an enthusiasm gap on the Democrats' side. So right now, I would say 55-45 that Trump will be elected.
So you're predicting Donald Trump returns to the White House.
Yeah, and here one of the things that's interesting about it, and one of the reasons I don't want to say conclusively, is that the betting market, and because I gamble, like I'm a sports gambler, I bet on games. I'm not a gambler particularly, but the betting markets are completely for Trump. It's like almost 60% in favor of Trump. So why did they see something? Why are they willing to put their money behind something that nobody else sees? I don't have an answer to that. I think it's really interesting, and they've usually been right, the betting markets.
Okay, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
And
Bruce will be back tomorrow.
Me.
Bruce will be back tomorrow to discuss the results. Might have to get you in here at 10:30 tomorrow morning here. So I've already made my call on Toast.
What do you think? What do you think the electoral college is?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was on the side.
270 is the number.
Okay, so I think that it will be a convincing victory for Kamala Harris. This is what I predict, I think. So Kamala Harris.
She gets the Rust Belt and she rolls.
She'll definitely win Pennsylvania. And I think when all the math is done, it'll be a convincing win. And of course, I believe that Donald Trump will say the election was rigged, and it'll be a shitstorm until inauguration, as we have sort of a repeat of 2020. Do you feel, Bruce, before I move on, I am moving on now, do you feel like the 2020 election was rigged?
I feel like because of COVID, it was different from any election we'd ever had before, and
That's a fact.
And the Democrats knew how to work the changes better than Republicans.
You mean mail-in balloting?
The mail-in balloting, the ballot harvesting, all of those things. I'd seen.
What does that mean, harvesting?
Ballot harvesting means you go into an old folks' home and you get all the people there and you give them the ballots and you harvest them all, and they're going like, I don't know, who should I vote for? And you basically harvest them all. And if there's somebody there who you don't like their vote, oops, you lose that on the way to the polls. I don't want to get into the illegal stuff particularly. There's lots of anecdotal material. There were 18 bellwether states that always went a certain way in elections. Trump won 17 of the 18 and somehow lost the election. So that raises some questions. But at the end of the day, it was about a different style of voting in America,
right.
And the Democrats understood how to make it work. They'd been making it work in California for a while in advance. I said that to people. I said they're going to do it on the national level if the Republicans aren't ready. So the Republicans deserved a lot of the things that happened to them in 2020 because they just weren't ready for what COVID did to the voting.
Now, California, interesting state to mention, only because if you exclude some of those landslides, like Reagan's his second term was like, I think he won every state except Minnesota or something like that, Ronald Reagan. So there's been some waves or whatever. But typically, California goes Democratic Party.
Lately.
Yeah, okay.
It used to be a conservative state. For a long time, it was a conservative state.
But in pretty like lately. Like we're going back now. I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time Republicans won. It might have been Reagan. I don't know. Was Reagan the last time that California went red? Probably.
Well, Schwarzenegger got elected governor as a Republican. So, yeah, in terms of the voting, maybe that was a little bit different. But, yeah,
they do say, now, not that, because popular vote does not matter, because obviously it's electoral college. We all know that. And we're similar system. I feel we're similar. Like, you can clean up in Toronto and still lose you could get devastated. Like, Pierre Poilievre could theoretically get 0 votes in Toronto and still have an easy majority when we go to the polls next year.
You're saying that Toronto could dominate an election? You're saying this to an
Alberta? The opposite, right? The opposite. Yeah. And I think, Doug Ford learned he could be premier without having many seats in Toronto as well.
It's fascinating what he's doing, too, looking at it from the outside.
I have so many places I want to go, and I do want to get to hockey here. To put a bow,
Please.
Where was okay? My point on the California thing is because California, like they could call it now. I know the polls don't close till 8:00, but if CNN
Are they even
was
open yet?
I don't even know if they're
sure.
open yet in California because it's only 8. Yeah, you're right. It's 8:30.
Yeah.
But they could call California for Harris now. Like that's a foregone conclusion. New York and California are going
7 electoral college votes.
Like it's done. So that's done. And they say because of that,
New York,
there's a
yes.
lot of people in those states that they don't really have a need to vote. Like they don't like that. Whereas we're in swing states, it's like you got to get out. Your vote's going to matter. You're a swing state. But in California, New York, they're already going to Harris. So there isn't that same, compelling motivation to get out and vote. So there are a lot of there's millions of people in those states who won't cast a ballot, but would have if it would have made a difference. But they don't feel it matters.
There's sort of California's on 3 levels, and you're absolutely right. The presidential thing, there's no point. Voting for the California senator, it's going to be a Democrat. There's no point. But there are a lot of congressional districts that have traditionally gone Republican, which have gone Democratic recently, which might be in play. So for people in those congressional districts, there is a reason to vote in them. New York State is also a little bit more diverse. Upstate New York is more Republican. Downstate, of course, as we know, is as blue as you can get.
Right.
It's really interesting to see how close the voting margins are going to be. We would not be surprised to hear later on that, like I think the last time, maybe 40,000 votes spread over 5 states just to get back to the thing about 2020, you have to admit that you get to midnight and Trump is leading in the 5 swing states, and then all of a sudden, whoops, we halted the vote.
But we know why, right? There's a reason. It's the mail-in ballots that had to be counted.
No, they stopped the vote because they told us in live time, they told us that they had a water main break in one of the states and something else in another state, and they literally suspended the voting for 3 or 4 hours, and then all this other stuff came in, and there was hardly any Trump vote in it. If we saw that being done in Chile, if we saw that being done in Botswana, we'd sort of say that kind of stinks a little bit, right? He got no votes after all of the mail-in votes. So
but you're such a bright guy. You would acknowledge that the mail-in ballots are going to heavily favor the Democratic Party, particularly because the rhetoric from Donald Trump in 2020, which was COVID times, was line up and vote. Don't do even though Donald himself does a mail-in ballot, which is interesting. But he was basically telling the MAGA people, the Trumpers, not to do mail-in ballots, and the opposite was true for the Democratic. Yeah, the opposite was true for the Democratic message. So we can kind of, if it's close and the mail-in ballots have to be counted, you could call that for the Democratic Party, just using reason, like leaving any bias out of the equation.
5 separate states. They were all the swing states. They were all the ones that he was trailing in. Even the New York Times had Trump leading in Georgia at midnight on that night. And then all of a sudden everything changes. And there's nobody more Democratic than the New York Times. So I just think that that stinks. That stinks.
But I can't tell if you're saying it was rigged or not. Like, I mean, do you think 2020 was a fair election?
What's that old expression about? It's not justice be done, but justice be seen to be done. Elections are like that. Elections have to be seen to have been done. And again, COVID scrambled the rules for everything. I understand the confusion. I understand why people defend it. I understand why people oppose it. But just some of the things that happened were really out of character. We'll see today.
And your guy lost.
He's not my guy. I'm not an American.
I don't know. I read the not the public broadcaster. I feel like there's a strong rooting interest for Donald J.
I
Trump.
really have an antipathy to the other side, I guess is probably the best way to say it.
Right.
I really have an antipathy towards the modern Democratic Party.
Right.
And if the alternative is the Republican Party, believe me, there's some people there who I'm not so fond of either. Mitch McConnell, he clears his throat.
Well, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. It's only a matter of time for Mitch there, I think. But okay. So we never answered.
You
So
looked
I'm
at the
moving off. I know I checked my watch to see what time it was. If
But you
Brad
also
Jones
did
had-
Mitch in the funeral home at the same time.
That was intentional. So Diamond Dog, though, I'm
Yes,
moving
sir.
off Trump now.
Okay.
If you bring him up later, I'll revisit Trump. But I'm
got
going
no
to be
more to
tuned in.
say.
So I don't get MSNBC. I don't get. I don't subscribe to CNN. I don't subscribe to Fox News. So I don't subscribe to any American news outlet. But what I tune into at 9 o'clock, because I find it, I just like the presentation. I just want the facts, and I enjoy my PBS. I'm a PBS guy tonight. What are you going to be watching? Are you going to be flipping around? What's your go-to? Are you going to be
I'm staying
Fox
at somebody
News?
else's house, and I got to go look and see which ones.
Oh.
I don't even know if they have
Maybe they don't
MSNBC.
subscribe either. I
Well,
don't.
They're liberal people. They're very liberal people.
Are they news junkies?
Yeah,
Okay, they probably do have the
but
news.
I don't think they'll have Fox because I like to go around. The other thing that's going to come out of this election is the decline of mainstream media as a force in our lives the way it used to be. That the internet, and this is obviously something that you're very fond of, that the internet, the social media world has really passed it by as a place for a discussion of political stuff, cultural stuff, etc. You are now able to accumulate millions of people to a podcast. Things that the broadcasters, the traditional broadcasters, have always dominated. They have competition now, and Joe Rogan on one side, and
Rogan endorsed Trump yesterday. I want to say.
trying to think of who one of the liberal guys is that has huge numbers with a podcast, whatever there. But that's one of the things that's happened is the status of traditional media, and I would include the CBC and CTV here in our country, has been eroded, and we have a different way of conducting political discourse in our lives now that we didn't have before. Which is why I understand you're upset with Elon Musk. But I think that you still need to have all of these voices out there. And to get elected now, you have to get social media on side with you.
All right. So to answer Diamond Dog's question, that was not about MAGA, not about Trump, because I've moved off of Trump and MAGA. I'll be tuning in tonight, PBS. We'll be seeing what happens. I'll see what I know when I fall asleep at 11:30. Maybe I'll have Bruce back in the basement tomorrow to talk about it all. But you did not address this line. I'm going to...
I'm sorry.
Does Pierre Poilievre have actual policy solutions beyond slogans and memes? We already know what the problems are. So Diamond Dog, is it his real name? Are they eating the Diamond Dogs? I don't know. But do you have a...
I have a thing about people who go on social media and have aliases. I like when they reveal themselves. I do. You do. Well, it's pretty easy to find out who you are, even though you do have an alias. But my name's out there if you want to get at me. The thing about if I'm Pierre Poilievre and the polls tell me I'm going to get 220 seats and Trudeau's going to get bumpity bump, I'm saying as little as possible. I'm not boxing myself in on positions. I'm not giving them a lot of material for which to go at. As a political reality, I don't want to give them that stuff. And it's one of the things about why doesn't he go get his security clearance is because he doesn't want to be held responsible. He doesn't want them to say, well, now you know what's in the security thing. How can you say those? He just wants to basically say, you know what, this is your circus, you and the NDP. You keep doing what you're doing. He doesn't want to get put into that position. And because of all the American political stuff, et cetera, people have missed that Danielle Smith got a 91% approval in Alberta. Shocked that she got such an approval. And she's basically come out and said, we're not going to cap our emissions. We're not going to do any of that stuff. We're going to continue to drill, and we're going to continue to sell our oil, which is a real confrontational position vis-a-vis this liberal government. So... And Poilievre, that allows him to stand to the side a little bit and let the premiers fight the fight for him. I wouldn't get involved.
I know I promised myself I'm done with Trump, but Rob Pruce took Snopes has the fact checking. So the 2020 claim, he wants me to address this, and I feel I owe it to Rob because he was here on Sunday. Was it Sunday? For Toast. He's been here recently. It was a great episode. Maybe it was Saturday. I can no longer remember. But he writes in, okay, so the claim that you're referencing is that on election night in 2020, a burst water pipe at a ballot processing site in Georgia's Fulton County allowed workers to steal the election from, or I think you mean, I don't know if you said that, but this is the quote.
I didn't say
allowed workers to steal the election from former President Donald Trump. AP, this is not Snopes. This is the Associated Press. Can we still trust Associated Press?
Not really, but that's okay.
Okay, well, I'll continue.
Voice of authority, yeah.
False. A water leak briefly delayed ballot processing in Atlanta's State Farm Arena early that morning. Unrelated surveillance footage from the late evening showed workers removing ballot containers from under a table after confusion arose about when work was ending for the night. This was the subject of false claims that I can't even speak. It depicted workers pulling out, quote, suitcases of illicit votes, but investigators later determined it was part of normal ballot processing and there was zero evidence of improper ballots. I'm just throwing it out there because
first
people
of
are like, oh, I didn't know about this.
When I say about the pipe leak, what I'm saying is in real time, that's what we were told by the major networks. That was why the delay. So in real time, we were told that there's some sort of pipe leak. What it turned out to be later is irrelevant because that's what we were told in real time. And as for the, the innocence of the ballot and stuff, they kicked the GOP scrutineers out of the room. They started putting up barricades around the voting counting area where people counted the votes. And they got rid of the scrutineers. I'm not saying that something funny happened. I'm saying that if you were going to do it, that's one way you would certainly do it.
Okay, but am I right that even if Georgia went to Trump, the Electoral College still favored Biden in 2020? Don't have the map in front of me, but I have this thought memory because of the other swing states that went to Biden.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough of Biden.
Probably Georgia. The worst thing about Georgia for the Republicans was that they lost both Senate seats.
Okay. All right. Now, you did a little Pierre Poilievre there, but just a question for you as a guy who's a political junkie. Should a premier of a province, so you mentioned your Alberta premier a moment ago, but should the premier of a province be passing laws that mess with municipal bike lane plans? Like, of all the things that belong to a city, right? When I think about it, my garbage collection, whatever, the water, like there's certain things, this is a city's responsibility. To me, and I'm trying to remove my bias as a guy who uses our bike lanes every single day, but to me, bike lanes is such a a municipal thing. And the premier getting involved in that, to me, makes no sense. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
I mean, he's playing politics with the city and how the rest of the province feels about Toronto and bike lane, whatever it is. Listen, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I can't tell you whether he has the right to do that. But this is something that happens, for instance, in Quebec politics. For people who don't know Quebec politics, it's often really good politics for the premier of the province to campaign against the island of Montreal versus the rest of the province. And this is a little bit of what he's doing. Listen, the optics of it is a lot of people are saying, absolutely, get rid of these stupid bike lanes. I mean, the strip along Bloor just north of Queen's Park. This is the other problem is this is all around Queen's Park where he does business all the time. It's probably irritating him. Some of the bike lanes there are maybe a little intrusive.
He should stay in his lane, as we say. Okay, but he probably does.
I wouldn't have advised him to do that. I would have said, come out and say, I don't think they're a good idea. The idea that you're going in. Now, the problem is...
he lost the mayoral. He did run to be mayor when his brother was sick.
That's right.
He lost that election. John Tory won that election.
The problem is the city's broke. It needs the provincial government funding for a lot of stuff. It gives him an entry into... getting into places maybe he shouldn't necessarily be, but I understand the politics behind it.
Okay, so in my brilliant podcasting excellence, I'm going to segue to sports by asking you for your take on Rogers buying out Bell in the MLSE shakeup. Okay, so I know you wrote about this on your blog that I read, but...
Did you disagree with that column too?
No, because, No, I didn't disagree with that call. It's one of those rare moments where I said, "Oh, Bruce still has it. He hasn't completely lost his marbles." What is your take here? Is this good for the fans? Is this indifferent? Is it bad? Rogers will basically own all the major sports teams in the city of Toronto.
Yeah, I don't like that we're seeing this concentration even more so. At Calgary, for instance, it's the same thing. The Calgary Flames own all the teams there. And I think if you get a bad management group, it means you get 5 people get the disease as opposed to just one at a time. I have to be careful. My son works for Bell, and Bell has been really good to him, so I'm not, I don't want to say anything here that's going to get my son fired or anything. We just have too much.
Could you imagine the outrage if your son got fired because of comments his dad made on Toronto Mic'd?
Nobody would care.
I would root for that headline. I'd lean in.
Nobody would. Nobody. I'm not going to say anything that way. I think it's an inevitability that we're headed there for this kind of concentration. The question is, these are 2 phone sales companies. These are companies that really make their money selling phones,
right.
And oftentimes I think they haven't had people in place who know the business. And the Blue Jays are a perfect example of Toronto sports these days. Now, it used to be that Bob McCown ran Toronto sports. If he was down on somebody, that was trouble for them. And Bob's not around anymore doing that sort of thing. But if he's got his podcast.
Speaking of strokes, he's off his game.
Well, but he's doing his podcast, whatever. But the management of the Blue Jays these days, it's just, I can see why he's pleasing the MLSE people, or his owners, rather the Sportsnet people. I can understand why he's pleasing them. He got the redistricting of the arena, the stadium, all that sort of stuff. All of those things, he's done a really good job on Shapiro. But the team stinks. And
absolutely. And
you had a Greek-Canadian guy who was here. Now, granted, he walked away, but they certainly didn't hold on to him, and he hasn't done bad things in Atlanta. I just felt like
he's done very well. He's made the playoffs, I think, every year since he left. Yeah,
but he
has a World Series.
With all of the teams in Toronto, we have a problem, which is that the metropolitan area is so big that when things go against you and the public gets against you, it's really it's a tsunami that develops, and too many of the people who run the teams have been kind of susceptible to that. I was driving here listening to what's going on in Chicago about the quarterback that they've got now, Caleb Williams. And there's only one team, and it's a metropolitan area of 8 or 9 million people, and the dynamics are really, really tough for them. And so Toronto, it's a very tough place to run it, and I feel just at MLSE, the way it's constituted right now, is just a little too corporate.
Interesting. Now, this Leaf team, which has consistently underwhelmed in the playoffs when it matters. This team has never won a third round, because when they won the Stanley Cup last, there was no third round.
That's right.
So in the history of this franchise, they've never won a third round series, which is kind of wild when you sit back and think about that. Because the team's actually, although a little, not a great start, but it is a skilled, it's a good team. I think the Leafs are a good regular season hockey team. I think where they fall off the tracks is in the playoffs, which unfortunately that's really all that matters. And the Raptors are 100% rebuilding now, but we do have a flag that will fly forever from 2019. Yep. Okay, that was wild. So I'll never forget 2019. I think the Argos, they had a playoff game, the Argos, the other day, and I just tuned in for the fourth quarter because there was like 100 points scored in that game. It was wild.
58 points or something.
58-38, highest scoring playoff game ever. But they were not close to selling out BMO Field. And when you can't sell out a winner-take-all playoff game, I think you've got this.
On beautiful weather too.
Beautiful weather, and they had a whole upper deck on one side. They didn't even sell tickets for that. And it was a lot of empty seats. I'm like, what's going on here? All this is to say that the Blue Jays, the Blue Jays seem to be onto something, and then made a series of decisions that made this team not only a poor performing team, but very difficult to like. I find the Jays, I found myself rooting against the Blue Jays last season. Like, I need changes, and I didn't get any changes I was rooting for. So it's like I rooted against my team because I didn't want that administration back in charge of. I didn't want the Cleveland duo back, and of course they're back. So I guess I got to root against them again next season. But yeah, so things are kind of bleak right now in Toronto sports.
I don't think that. I think the Maple Leafs have a chance to win the Cup this year. They're very similar to Edmonton, and I follow, obviously, being in Alberta.
I watched a lot of Edmonton playoff last year because my wife was from Edmonton.
They got within a game. It was that close, and I think the Leafs could have that kind of a playoff series if everything goes right. I wrote and this is not in defense of the Maple Leafs or their management or anything, but I wrote a column the other day that we're all deluded into thinking that it's still a 6-team or 12-team NHL. The odds of winning in a 32-team league are infinitesimally worse for you. And so we have to get the perspective that if you get into the semifinals, into the final four of the NHL, if the Leafs get, and they've been there occasionally, they haven't won, but if you get,
but not since the early 2000s.
but it's a huge accomplishment to get that far, and for not just the Leafs, but every fan, because it's so difficult to do these days with all those teams. So I think we have to be a little more forgiving of the Leafs if they only get to the second round or the third round, and understand the odds against you getting that far. And I think they have elements there that they're like Edmonton, that they've got too much money invested in the forwards and not enough in the back end. They're trying to address that. They've got one of my favorite guys, Chris Tanev. I love Chris Tanev. Started in Vancouver when I was covering the Canucks, and then of course he was in Calgary. But they've improved a little bit. But the two teams are kind of like similar to each other, and you need everything to go right. You can't have your guys get hurt. But I think that this is still a good chance for the Leafs to win this year. And the other problem that you've got when you've got a team like Edmonton or Toronto is they know that these games in November and October, just get through them. It's just a get through them sort of thing. I remember the Blue Jays years that the early part of the season was painful because they knew they were all marshaling. They said, look, I'm not going to sell the farm early in the season. Same thing with the hockey team. We can't sell the farm. These veterans know that. It's hard for Berube to get these guys to play balls to the wall right away because they know that they have lots of time. And I know Berube from Calgary when he was there. I think he's a good coach for this group.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. And one thing that surprised me was I was pretty sure Marner would be traded for some, back end support. Some.
I thought they would.
I really was surprised because I know you can't get rid of Tavares. He's on the other side of his pretty good career. He's done. Yeah, you want to keep Austin Matthews. I feel you want to keep Nylander. That's exceptional value. So to me, the odd man out, just based on process elimination, is okay. You got this great skilled player, Mitch Marner. This should be worthy of some blue line help and building out the back end. And I was surprised that he's back. That's all I'll say there.
He reminds me a little bit of the late Johnny Gaudreau. Gaudreau had all of the same knocks against him. He seemed to have gotten it all together in his last year in Calgary, and then went to Columbus for reasons best known to himself. I have to tell a very sad story.
Yes.
We were talking about Eric Duhatschek, and we were having the rehearsal dinner on the Thursday night of the week before the weekend of Labor Day. My daughter was getting married on the Friday. We had a lovely meal at an Italian restaurant down near Front Street, and we were coming out, and somebody came up to us and said, Johnny Gaudreau and his brother had both been killed. And they were on their way home from a rehearsal dinner. Right. And they had a wedding the next day.
Their sister was getting married the next day.
Yeah.
They were cycling.
Yeah. We just looked at each other and couldn't imagine anything worse. How does that happen? Couldn't imagine anything worse. And here we were going to go the next day. How blessed we were, how lucky we were so far that this thing was going to go through. Anyhow, the Gaudreau thing is interesting too because he went to Columbus, and frankly, I don't know what the hell he was doing there. They weren't going to win. He was going to get his money. But one of the things about the book, Deal With It.
We're talking about it right now. Yeah, Deal With It.
And it's my first self-published book, and I've done it again with my son Evan, who works up at TSN. The great thing about self-publishing is that as soon as I saw that unfortunately Johnny and his brother were killed, I was able to go back into the file, change that chapter so it reflected the reality, and was able to. I don't know if this book has it, but
yeah, this was probably printed before the Gaudreaus passed away.
But all the books that are coming out now,
right,
courtesy of our publisher,
it's like a software patch.
Absolutely. Yeah. But traditional publishing, when I did in Exact Science, he said, segueing to another book, the previous book, which was about the 6 drafts that we picked that were the significant ones,
right.
They wanted them. I'm not mad at them, but they wanted the copy in April, May, and you couldn't touch it until October. And if things changed, if Johnny Gaudreau died in the middle of that waiting period, you couldn't do anything, and your book looks stale at the end. It's This is a problem with modern publishing, is they have these long printing details. With doing on Kindle, I did this one on Kindle, but there's other good people. Literally, the minute you decide, okay, we're ready to go, you print it. You go on Amazon, you put your book on various places, and they're ready to sell.
Speaking of Steve Paikin, he writes here, and I'm looking at the foreword, the dynamic son-father duo of Evan and Bruce Dowbiggin tell the stories behind the stories of these noteworthy trades and more in the pages of this book. They are two of the most astute hockey observers on the scene today, and I wouldn't trade their insights for anyone else's. See what he did there? He brought back trade.
Yep.
So
He's a clever boy.
he's clever. I got to. He's gonna do well. He's gonna do well. My buddy Murray.
In the new country.
So, right, Murray, who I'm going to see at Bruce Springsteen tomorrow night. Murray's got 3 stickers on the back of his car. He lives in the Junction, so maybe this car has he's a huge Dolphins fan. He's got a Miami Dolphins logo. He's got that quote from Born to Run, tramps like us, baby, we were born to run. Like, that's on the back of his car. And he's got a Toronto Mike logo on the back of his car. Those are the big 3 for Murray. Bruce Springsteen, the Miami Dolphins, and Toronto Mike. And Murray went to Sherway Gardens. He said he brought 3 of his friends with him so that you could sell 4 books. And he was showing me the pictures that he took with you at Sherway Gardens. Shout out to Murray.
I showed up. This is about the 4th or 5th signing I've done, and usually it's gradual. People come by. You might sell a few books here, a few books there. You talk to a lot of people. I get there 10 to 12. I'm not supposed to start anything until 12, and Murray and the guys are there, and they're absolutely, it's like a pep squad. They're so excited, and I'm excited to see them. And they all bought books. We had a great old chat, thanks to them. And then, of course, they told about their relationship with you.
They said they're there to support an FOTM. And because sometimes he gets called in for emergency plumbing problems because he's a plumber, and he told me if he couldn't make that, I was actually going to get you to sign a book for Murray. The book I have in my hand, because like I said, I was giving them away to guests for a while, and they were all well received.
And I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, look, it was fun to do. I forgot to send the invoice, so I'll give it to you before you leave. I forgot.
Word of mouth, yeah.
So let me ask about that, because the book is great because, as a Toronto guy, I go straight to let's talk about the Gilmore trade or whatever, but a lot of people...
read the Frank Mahovlich one first?
No, I didn't read, well, I'm a 90s guy. Okay, I'm only 50, come on. But I'm curious about the whole self-publishing thing. So is this the first book you've self-published?
Yes.
So what are the nuts and bolts of this? Like, are you in a Google Doc, or are you in like a Word doc hammering this out with your son? And then can you give me the nuts and bolts?
Oh, the misery. Now you want to talk. Producing the book was fine because we did a book before, and I've done books before.
Yeah.
We get it all done, and using the Kindle templates. I go to put the file. I think I did the file as a Pages file, and then I converted it to Word.
Oh, because you're an Apple guy. Okay.
So I had it as a Word file.
Right.
I converted it because I know nobody uses Pages; it's useless. But that's what I write. Anyway, we had it in Word, and I kept trying to put it into the file, the template that they had.
Yeah.
And because my artist, as you can see from the cover here, we did a nice job.
Yeah.
He had done all this stuff, and I'd already put the cover in. And I'd said, okay, here. And I find out it takes me, I'm telling you, when things go sideways in tech stuff, it just drives you crazy. It took me 2 days to figure out that this was 7 by 11, and I kept trying to hammer my form into the template that was 6 by 8. And I'm going like, it wasn't working, and all this stuff. It took us forever to figure out that. And then I had another problem that I didn't understand with the pagination, which is page numbers on every page, how that gets done. So I was literally incorporating the number onto the page.
Oh, you were like hard coding it in there.
Hard coding.
Oh, yeah, rookie mistake, Bruce.
So every time we change something, then I wasted so much of my life doing that.
But the next time you write a book, you've got all that ironed out. You live and learn, and you learned a lot about it. I was just curious how it all worked, because, yes, you're talking about Kindle, but I'm holding an actual physical, this looks like it was printed by a major publication. This is real deal, man.
And now people tell me.
Nice glossy cover. It's all good, yeah.
Murray and the guys, we were talking to them the other day. The thing they like, that I like too, is the bigger format, bigger print, easier to read.
Well, that's why you saw me. I was going to read from it. I'm like, these guys came out. Yeah. So are you wearing contacts? How do you get to your age without any glasses?
Oh, no, I wear cheaters.
Oh, you wear cheaters.
Okay.
When you read. Okay. Because this is a new thing for me. So I'm still the novelty of it all. Because until I turned 50, I never needed glasses for anything. And then now it's like, is that a 6 or a 5? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, now I'm making mistakes. So
wait till you're 70.
Well,
you're 70.
Look, I hope to get there.
Hopefully you get to 70. Driving bikes around Toronto, anything could happen. But
especially because because of the rhetoric from Doug Ford, I feel, and I felt this, I feel like his he's created this polarization where I think motorists are gunning for me now. Like, I don't think they're sharing the road because it feels like it's us versus them. And I'm a motorist too.
I don't think they hate you any more than they did before.
Okay.
Which is to say that I think they resented you. Some of the stuff about bikes.
Well, mark my words. Yeah, go ahead.
I rode bikes in Toronto for years, and I understand people who cut you off. I understand all of the indignities there are, and how they push you into puddles, and you got to go on the side where the pavement
where the potholes are.
Yeah, exactly. I understand all of that stuff. So I'm a little understanding of bicyclists, but some of them have an attitude.
Of course. It's like, as if some motorists don't have an attitude. One time the guy, do you stop at every stop sign? And I was like, okay, like the motorists I see on the quiet streets
rolling
are,
stop.
You know what I mean? The rolling stop. Like, please, like let's face it. Some cyclists are gonna do a rolling. Use it. The way I operate here is if I'm not talking about major streets, okay, like Blue or whatever. I'm talking about the smaller streets. Basically, stop signs turn into yield signs, and a red light turns into a stop sign, basically, if there's no cars around. This is called the Idaho stop. And
you also have the problem that, of course, you're right here on Lakeshore with the tracks, and oh, my goodness.
Well, that you have to, you got to cross perpendicular. I mean, I bike with my daughter. My 8-year-old and I biked to school this morning, so it's like, these are the lessons and I'm like, if it ever rains...
Oh, I see. You weren't. Oh, I see. You're just taking her to school.
I didn't go to school. I dropped her off, and we lock up the bikes, and she goes to school, and I'll pick her up. I'll pick her up later. But basically, it's like, this is the black ice of the neighborhood, these streetcar tracks, and you got to cross perpendicular, and you got to slow down. I'll just move off the bike lane thing, except to say that if they do rip up the bluer bike lanes, and it sounds like that's what they're going to do, I will take the lane. Like, I've been typically a guy who will take my my little sliver of the right side and go alongside the vehicles in the right lane. If I feel like, no, not anymore. Now you took out my bike lane, I'll take that damn lane. You can go 20 clicks an hour behind me if you want. That's where I'm at.
We're having exactly the same debate in Calgary. They've done all the same things with the roads, etc. There's the same bitchiness about it, complaints about it. And we have people who bicycle in much worse weather than you do. Believe me, we have some real keeners.
Well, we do snow here, Bruce. You lived here a long time. There will be ice and snow at some point.
We have snow, but we also have minus 40 some days, where your lungs just crystallize as you're breathing. So anyhow.
So I hear. I get reports from Edmonton all the time, and I'm like,
did you enjoy the Doug Gilmore chapter? Did you?
Yeah. So it's I think you're a great writer, and I think you and your son are like a dynamic duo. And I look forward to more sports books from you guys, because they're sort of thinking person. Why am I genderizing that? Come on, Mike. Come on. Thinking person sports books. And if I can just ignore the fact that you think something was suspicious about the 2020 election and then you don't want to get a COVID vaccine or whatever, I think you're a very effective and smart sports writer.
Well, I've always tried to be. I tell a story about when I was hired to do CBC at 6. The executive producer, Howard Bernstein, phoned me up, and he said, I'd like you to host the 6 o'clock show. And I said, well, Howard, I've never done TV. No, we'll teach you how to do it. Okay, well, that's fine. And I said, well, why me? I mean, there's guys across the country who all want the Toronto 6 o'clock show. Right. This is the pinnacle. You're hiring a guy who hasn't been there. He said, I'll tell you why. He said, when I drive to work with my wife, who also worked at CBC, always when the sportscaster would come on, she'd turn off the radio. And she left the radio on to listen to you doing sports. He said, that's what I want.
Wow.
So I think that was my niche, and maybe it is my niche, that I'm trying to be intelligent about it. Bill James and people like that had a big influence on me, that you can be smart about it and that you don't have to do the bromides and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not trying to knock old-timey sports guys, but I just thought there was an intelligence that you could bring to it. And what we try to do with each of these chapters is
deal with it.
The Gilmore chapter starts with Cliff Fletcher starting the Atlanta Flames. Now, how does that arrive in Toronto? Well, it goes through the whole process of him building the Flames, going and getting Doug Gilmore from St. Louis. Cliff comes to Toronto. Gilmore plays out his welcome in Calgary and ends up in Toronto. And then we chart what happens after the trade, because, of course, the Gilmore trade, as good as it was, the Leafs didn't get the cup that they were hoping for. So we try to do soup to nuts. And I also try to think, and you're a perfect example of this, with each one, there are generational trades in your life, like the Frank Mahovlich trades for people that age. Man, that was they traded Frank to Detroit, and he's playing with Gordy and Alex, and that was huge for people.
No, you're so right about the generational thing, because I was like, when Gretzky was traded to the Kings. Like that was an earth-shattering, oh my God, you know, like, so that was like the first big thing, big hockey trade sort of. And there's a, you know, you talk about that, of course. So the Gretzky trade, because I'm doing quick math in my head, but I'm like 13 years old or something like that, 13, 14 years old. Like that was monster. And then for me personally, as a diehard Leaf fan, you know, the Gilmore trade, I still remember hearing the announcement in the car, and it was like, so that was massive too. So those are like two kind of things. But what I liked learning about in your book is like, it's like having more appreciation for like the Esposito trade, right? Like this is the stuff that I missed.
It made Bobby Orr.
Right.
If you were there at the time, you know, there were great teams. The Canadians were a great team, but the Bruins were a super team. You know, it was the 60s too. It was Joe Namath. It was a sexy time for sports.
Right.
And they put up offensive numbers that nobody had seen before, the Bruins. And they were swagger, and they fought, and they just, anyhow, that made the Bobby Orr team into a great team. And we follow it through because Phil then gets, after having been told by Harry Sinden, you're always a Bruin, Phil. He traded him a month later to the Rangers. So we follow Phil to the end of that, and we show you what happened with Hodge and Stanfield, the other guys in it, and just trying to put perspective on each one of those things so you know what happened.
So it's well done. And I would say, and I'm curious, like, so I think it was Stephen Brunt who told me, by the way, do you have a relationship with Stephen Brunt?
Yeah, I know. I've known Steve for years. We used to do panels on Pakin's show.
I could see that, yeah.
Just Stephen would be, again, another of the guys, our generation of guys who came in who were interesting, I don't say educated, but thoughtful people. And Stephen, that was always his thing, was a kind of a thoughtful approach to sports.
Well, it's interesting because I like the way you write about sports, but I also like the way Stephen Brunt writes about sports. I like the way Gare Joyce writes about sports. I think I'm interested in a more like
that was a different generation. We came on the heels of the Jim Hunt generation of people who, and again, I'm not knocking Shaky and those guys and all of them. They were doing a job the way they saw it, and ours was different, you know.
So I brought up Brunt because he told me, you know, if you write a hockey book, all your sales happen for Christmas, basically. So, so I'm just trying to, because I was giving these out, you know, months ago, I was giving out Deal With It. So is it sort of like you get it out early so that the low-hanging fruit falls, and then the push comes because, you know, if everybody's going to be buying a gift for a hockey fan in their life, in this country at least, and Deal With It, the trades that stunned the NHL and changed hockey, is an ideal gift for a hockey fan.
Yeah. And you know who buys hockey books, by the way?
Can I guess?
I bet you're going to guess it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to think the hockey books are bought by children, like for their dad. And I say that, again, I should say for their parent, because I know a lot of women like hockey books, but let's face it, for their dad. Okay, that'll get me in trouble, but it's true. And their grandfather, their dad. And you tell me now what your answer was. That's my first thought.
Women and wives buy them because they don't know what the F to give their husband, their father, or whatever, their uncle. And when I was at Sherway, Sherway Indigo the other day, we sold about 20 of these ones, and I would say 18 of them were ones that were going to be gifted to somebody else. So when I inscribed them, I was inscribing them to somebody else. Okay, so how are sales going, and how can somebody buy this remotely here? Because are you doing any more live appearances? Hopefully next week, the NHL alumni luncheon. We're going to be there. Terry Harper's going to be there. This is all in connection with the Hall of Fame weekend that's coming up here. But everything's new. You asking me questions? Yeah, you're in
uncharted waters here.
So hopefully we're going to sell some books there.
But is that fun to sort of tote your own now that I think that would be exciting to, like, you're not relying on some publisher. You're doing this yourself.
If I was 50, this would be easier.
Okay.
I'm 70, and I'm saying, "Wow, all this stuff."
But
But
your son's there to support things here, Evan.
We're finding out how it works. We brought it out in the spring last year to take advantage maybe of some playoff stuff. We're now trying to do it. I did a bookstore. The Chapter's down in Fredericton, where my younger son lives. I've done a few in Calgary. I've had lots of good media from my friends, and I'm most grateful to that. But mostly we're selling through Amazon.
So go Amazon.ca?
Yeah, Amazon.ca, and just put under the book section, just put Deal With It. It comes up there. They're great about shipping. If you become a Prime member on Amazon, they'll ship for free. They get the stuff there pretty quickly. Also, I have a book site called BruceDowbigginBooks.ca, and it has all of my titles, going right back to the first one, Defense Never Rests, which I think was 1993. the first book that I've come out with, and all of the books, including the one I did with Tony Comper, the CEO of BMO, that came out a couple of years ago, was long listed for the Business Book of the Year. So they're all there. But anyhow, if you want to get it, that's the best way to do it. I'm just learning, Mike. I just trying to find out how this thing works, and it's really tough to get your name above the title. For people to pick it up.
Right, because where they put it in Indigo, for example, at Sherway, where they put the book is massive, right?
Well, for people who don't know, by the way, when you walk into a bookstore and you see the latest whatever it is out in the front, somebody's book, Brian Burke's book out front, the publishers have paid for that location.
But that's huge because you're an indie self-publishing. You don't have a budget for that.
No, we don't, and so we're behind the eight ball. But I will say
that's why I didn't send you an invoice when I was promoting your book.
And thank you so much. And I meant that sincerely. But the trick behind this is to try to get the store general managers on side with it. And I will give credit to the Indigo people. They have a consignment section now in almost all of their stores for independent publishing. Good. And they were most happy to have me sign at Sherway. I was just up at Square One, and I'm going to Yorkdale, and we're going to hopefully get some availabilities there and get the things in with consignment. But it's tough, and if you're self-publishing too, you'll sell most of your books through personal appearances. So if you're going to, like, I'm going to do this luncheon next week, or you do a speech, whatever it is, I sell them through my pro shop at my golf course. I have them put them on the counter. Hand selling is the way to do it when you're doing your own. So Paikin and I have this idea: if he'll ever stop working for a living and stop trying to do
what day is it? Hold on. Okay.
Every freaking thing under the God's green earth, is we want to go and do a ham and egg tour together and do our old double play combination. And we just need somebody who can organize a little bit of a tour for us, so we can go to speak to some libraries, speak to some bookstores, speak at some clubs, and we'll just go there and we'll bring our own books and afterwards sell them. I've got one of those little boxes now that you can do the credit card thing on.
Okay, good. Look at you. You could write a book about this process of self-publishing your book.
Yeah, it's been mostly good. And I've learned things now. I'm trying to talk to a friend of mine who's a golf course superintendent. And I want to do a book about the grass and golf, a theme book about grass and golf.
Okay, a lot of golfers need gifts for the holiday season as well.
Do. Well, I did a book about the stick in hockey. One of my most popular books is called The Stick, and it literally is about everything to do with sticks, from forest, the wood we have in Canada, etc. Right. And I'd like to do that about golf.
And now
courses.
Sticks aren't made of wood at all.
Nope. They're made.
Even my 10-year-old stick is not made of wood.
They're made in a lab. Do they break as often as they used to?
He doesn't play hard enough. That's what I tell him. Like, why haven't you broken the stick yet?
Well,
but it is house league. It's house league 10-year-olds. So
but guys hack your stick. That's used to be how you broke them, right?
Well, those players have gone on to AAA. Like, I feel like the house leaguers that are left at 10 are the guys who aren't.
What does it cost for a graphite stick these days?
I should know this off the top of my head. It was just bought. This one was on sale at Costco for like $60.
Wow!
But I think they're like $100. I think typically for. Wow. But I know that's why we don't want them to break it too often.
Brendan Shanahan told me a funny story because he grew up in this part of town.
Yeah, Mimico guy.
Yeah, and he had 3 brothers, and he was the right-handed shot. They were all left-handed shots. And his dad used to go to the Canadian Tire, and he'd go to the back of the Canadian Tire store where apparently they would throw out stuff into the bin. And he would go and he would get the straight blades because he didn't want to pay for anything else. And so he'd pay the Canadian Tire, and this is the story he told. He would pay the Canadian Tire manager for 4 sticks. And he insisted they all be like the straight blade. And so that's how Brendan got to be the kind of player he is.
Very interesting story. Now, I randomly picked up the book just now.
You still like Brendan? He hasn't soured? Has he soured himself here in Toronto?
He spends the cap. The way I always look at it is like, I don't know. The Maple Leafs spend the cap, and they're a bit top heavy, and they've only won 1 playoff round in the Shanahan era, but they only won 1 playoff round since 2004. That's 20 years now. So in the last 20 years, 1 playoff round. So I don't have like playoffs are everything in hockey. The President's Cup means nothing to me, like nothing.
Are people mad at him?
I think people are...
Because he was a popular guy going into this.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, the results are not much better than they were with, when Phaneuf and Kessel were your guys, right? So I think playoffs are everything. I feel like every year we say, okay, one more playoff round and we're going to judge him on this. But I feel the same way about Shapiro and Atkins, where it feels like for a few years in a row that, okay, that's enough now. You've had enough time and look what you've done. And this last year was so disappointing and it's just terrible. They were just sellers at the deadline, of course.
It was
anything
a
that
death
they
march.
could.
Yeah, it was a death march. It was
And
so
I
sad.
tuned out. I was out. Like, I didn't watch any. I watched once to see if I could witness the second no-hitter in franchise history. I tuned in. That's what it takes to get me to tune in now. Are you pitching a no-hitter in the ninth inning? Okay, let me see what's going on here.
The great thing about living in Calgary is the Blue Jay game comes on at about just after 5.
Right.
So by 7 o'clock, you can tell which way it's gone, and you can have a rest of your life. Whereas here in Toronto, of course, you've committed your whole evening to it.
No, you're so right. So I picked up the book, and I see I'm on the chapter you mentioned about Frank Mahovlich,
Yes.
the big trade from Detroit to.
It's an amazing. He's an amazing man. Amazing. And people always think of him as a Leaf. He had 2.5 fantastic years in Detroit, but specifically in Montreal, he was brilliant in Montreal. Did everything they wanted to. They didn't put any stress on him. Frank Mahovlich got worn out by Punch Imlach, and my friend Carl Brewer was another victim of Punch Imlach.
Right.
And we sort of explained the ups and downs of Frank here in Toronto and why the trade had to be made at the time. And yeah, it's again, for me, I was 13 when that trade happened. No, 14, I guess, when that trade happened. And to Detroit, because I was a Red Wings fan, it was like, maybe we'll win. Maybe we'll win,
Well, the one name that's jumping off the page here is Harold Ballard.
Yeah.
And on the live stream, Andrew Ward says, can you ask Bruce about Harold Ballard's role in Toronto trades? So,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the trades, because I was kind of a huge Leafs fan at the time, it gets referenced a lot, is Kordic for Courtnall. This trade gets, chatted about a lot. And, Gord Stellick's been in this very basement multiple times, basically telling me that he was told to make that trade because the coach wanted to get tougher and they wanted Kordic or whatever. So
No.
shockingly. So, I can only imagine Harold Ballard.
I think the Curvers trade was worse.
Right. Well, that pick could have been Lindros, but actually ended up, in my opinion, I think a better player throughout his long career. Scott Niedermayer. Am I right?
That's what I said in my book.
Yeah.
In the book, when we do the book
Okay.
about inexact science, we talk about that.
Right.
The foibles of Toronto trading, etc. But
Right.
I wrote a column a while ago for people, and I hate to get back to it, but I said if you're trying to understand Trump, go and read and watch Harold Ballard, because Ballard, that was the whole Ballard thing. He'd get up in the morning and find a way to rattle pots and pans. He'd call up Milt Donnell and he'd say, I'm going to trade him. I'm going to fire this guy, whatever. And the rest of us in the media would all have to follow in. He'd say outrageous things at press conferences, terrible things. The day that we went down there because they had to admit women into the dressing room, and he wouldn't let our reporter in there. And he stands out in front of the thing. And he says, you can't have a woman in there. Those guys are naked in there. Have you seen Salming? Have you seen what it looks like?
That clip's on YouTube because Ken Daniels
Yeah, that was
had
Ken.
it.
Yeah.
And he shared it with me, and I put it on my YouTube, and it's like one of my most popular videos is him describing that women can't be in the Maple Leafs dressing room because Borje Salming's member is like a third arm or whatever he was referring
Oh, yeah,
to.
no. But that is so Trumpian, right?
Right.
What did he
But-
do?
but you see
the
this-
other day he was talking about Arnold Palmer schlong. That's the two guys. They understand how to manipulate media in a way that's both nefarious but also amusing.
Sure,
at
but
times.
one of them owns a hockey team and a CFL team, etc., and the other wants the nuclear codes.
That's true.
to me-
Harold was more important. Now that you mention it.
Absolutely.
In Toronto, he sure was. He was the president. of
Oski
Toronto.
wee wee for
Yeah,
Harold there.
yeah.
But you see the difference there, right? Because this whole thing, he was given the microphone oral sex in some footage I saw the other day, and some of he talks about the member of the golfer and all this like stuff that I think I would be disappointed if my 10-year-old were that immature at this point. But Harold Ballard never sought to be in public office, as far as I know.
Well, he sought the public spotlight for the most high-profile team in the country, which
Which
Canada,
is very different, though.
Which in Canada is not much. Had we been able to vote out Harold Ballard, we'd have voted out Harold Ballard here a long time ago. But he was just a fascinating guy to be around, And we all envied Milton L because he got all the scoops. We couldn't get anything out of him. And I'm sure Gordy has told you all this stuff. Gord Stellick has told you all the stuff that went on behind his scenes.
And his brother too's been over and fleshed out. He's a Bob Stellick as well.
Bob's been on too?
Yeah,
Oh,
Bob came over and
wonderful guy.
I'm kind of very interested in all the Harold Ballard stuff. Harold Ballard greater than Donald Trump, my opinion. So here, Bruce,
Same act.
on air,
Yes.
on air meeting here. Okay, believe it or not, the listenership will be very surprised to know. I wanted to spend some time getting into the details of Alan Eagleson. I have audio clips pulled. You should see the homework I've done. I wanted to ask you about Russ Conway, and I wanted to talk. You mentioned Carl Brewer moments ago, and I have so many, and Susan Foster, his partner, and all this is here. Your role, everything. I have the clips and stuff. But here's what I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to look into your beautiful eyes, okay? Can we push this to your next appearance? So this is another reason for you to come back. But for real, I feel like a little bit of Charlie Brown trying to kick a football, and I'm Lucy. And I don't know how many times you've come over to talk about Alan Eagleson, and completely just we talked about everything else. And the next thing you know, we're at the 2-hour mark, and I'm like, I can't keep going. I got to do something else.
My wife asked me, what are you going to talk about this time? I said, well,
Alan Eagleson.
I think he wants to talk about Alan Eagleson.
I did. So that's not a lie. That's not a lie because I believed it to be true. That's what George Costanza told me.
Disinformation was disinformation or misinformation.
So,
I'm not sure which.
We will dive deep into the Alan Eagleson story. And if we delay this enough, it could coincide with his passing. Who knows? How old is Alan Eagleson today?
He's old enough to die.
Right. Like maybe that'll be. But of course, we have a geographical issue that I don't feel like zooming with Bruce Dowbiggin if I could just be patient and get him in the basement.
Probably be back in the new year. I may have to fly in. I've got another project I'm working on. I may have to fly in January. So I'll
January,
let you know.
Alan Eagleson in January. And we'll do it up proper. I don't want to jam it into the last 5 minutes here, but I got to say,
great stories.
I can't wait to get the full story. We're going to do it justice. So the Alan Eagleson deep dive with Bruce Dowbiggin will happen in January 2025. If there is a January 2025, because who knows what's going to happen tonight.
Well, with you and me, who knows? And enjoy the concert tomorrow.
I can't wait. And I also thought it's interesting timing because, as you know, this was originally going to be November 2023.
Yes.
And then hernia, I think he had hernia. I want to sing the Weird Al Yankovic parody of Living in America by James Brown. Living with a hernia. Yeah. Okay, so they delayed it a year. Yeah. So I've had these tickets a long time. But it's interesting how the timing is that this is Bruce's first show post-election. Bruce is very politically engaged.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Depending how things unfold here, it'll be interesting what mood he's in, what he has to say, the vibe of the place. Just another kind of.
He mentioned it Sunday. He said Tuesday's a big day for my country. And here's a song that he wrote about it. And it was a bit like a folk song. I didn't recognize too much about it, but anyhow, he's into it. For all of these people, I just wish I didn't have to see them now and see politics at the same time. All the actors, all the people who've taken positions.
Are you saying stick to sports? That's the stick to sports, stick to music?
I just have my dreams. I just have my image of how much I loved Robert De Niro and people like that, and I just can't watch him anymore.
See, I like them to be themselves. Like I can separate. I won't stop listening to a musician I like because I find out they're like a trumper. Like I don't have that in me or whatever. Yeah. But I don't think they need to stick to music. Like I'm okay when my athletes speak out. The head coach of the Spurs, when he speaks his mind on these topics, I'm interested in hearing it.
That's
whether
my
I
column
agree or
this
not.
week, talking this week about Popovich and some of his opinions on stuff, and was the Colin Kaepernick episode commensurate with what's his name from the 49ers wearing the MAGA hat the other night?
Always interesting to read what you have to say, even if I don't agree. So, Bruce, thanks for this visit. We'll do it again in January. I really want to get into this.
And I'll talk to Pagan on Friday, and we'll discuss what it's like to be on the show.
Okay, do that. And what do you call a ham and eggs tour, whatever you're gonna do?
Ham and egg it. If somebody,
I can be on that tour. Like we could be on that tour.
Somebody knows how to organize it. Somebody in this listening audience would be willing to put together something like that. We'd be willing to do it. We're not asking for much money. Just sell books.
And by the way, speaking of selling books, go to Amazon.ca and pick up multiple copies of Deal With It, The Trades That Stunned the NHL and Changed Hockey by Evan and Bruce Dowbiggin. forward by Steve Paikin. Buy multiple copies for all the hockey fans in your life, regardless of gender. Everybody will enjoy this
We had
book.
lots of women come to the store the other day for books.
Absolutely. And all genders love hockey. So pick up a copy or two for the holiday season, gift giving time.
I'm going to try and do a signing in Florida, too.
Oh, I forgot to give you a gift.
Which
that
one?
wireless speaker
Ooh,
is
good.
so you can listen to episode 5, season 7 of Yes, We Are Open. Al Grego, he visited with Amy Sarasani. Amy Sarasani from Shooters Family Golf Center and Restaurant. This family transformed a modest driving range into a beloved community hub serving Winnipeg for the past 31 years and counting. So subscribe and enjoy Yes, We Are Open with your new speaker, Mr.
These new
Dowbiggin.
chairs, by the way?
Nope. Those chairs have been here for many years, thanks to Blue Sky. And that brings us to the end of our 1,575th show. You can follow me at torontomike.com. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. You've got that beer for you, Bruce, courtesy of Great Lakes. Palma Pasta. You've got a lasagna in my freezer. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. That's where you go to find out where you drop off your old electronics, your old cables. Put in your postal code. Keep those chemicals out of our landfill. Raymond James Canada. Moneris. You're subscribing to Yes, We Are Open. And Ridley Funeral Home. You've got your measuring tape. See you all maybe tomorrow when I make Bruce come back and talk about what the hell happened tonight. We'll see if anything goes down.
If there's anything to report on, it may not be over till Thursday.
So stay tuned, stay safe. See you all then.